Welcome, and we are live. This is Alien Scientist, and you are watching Happy New Year episode. I'd like to wish a Happy New Year to everyone out there who's tuning in. We'll talk about some of the news that's going on. Apparently, the UFO report could be published by the government agencies in 180 days. The new COVID bill that just passed the Senate has a special piece in this bill chaired by Senator Marco Rubio to analyze a bunch of FBI data taken from investigations, intrusions of unidentified aerial phenomenon in restricted U.S. airspace. So we have another UFO investigation from the government, and they have 180 days to write a report, and I guess Mark Rubio and a bunch of these other guys are going to be involved. Big friggin' deal. We had a lot of experts from the military and stuff, and honestly, I'm not impressed by any of these people so far, or the research that they've done. Stephen Greer, I want to talk about for a second. The Disclosure Project, that press conference that happened in 2001, 20 years ago. It's hard to believe that was 20 years ago. Stephen Greer has definitely changed and developed since then. I had a lot of hope when I first had heard about Orion Project, which was, the Disclosure Project was all right. I said, hey, there's a bunch of these witnesses that have come forward, hundreds of them and stuff. And I remember pouring through hours of all those witness testimony to try and find relevant information or actionable intelligence, especially the scientific panel board members that he had. I was particularly interested in them. I think probably my favorite was it Jean-Claude Naudin? What's his name? Anyways, I'll find out the one witness that I really liked. He's a French guy from he's investigated UFOs for the French government and done a lot of interesting investigations into anti-gravity. What the heck is his name? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. But anyways, the Orion Project that Stephen Greer had come out with was talking about getting all the scientists involved to sort of bring these technologies and stuff out of the woodwork. And I really identified with what Stephen Greer was trying to do at that time with the Orion Project. And it's part of the inspiration for what I am doing right now with the Falcon Space Labs, the Hover Brothers Initiative, and the database, and the project that we're working on right now to bring anti-gravity. They were supposed to get an update from the lab too, guys. That's what I was hoping to do. That's why I'm on so late. I was waiting for them to get back to me with some updates from the lab. And those guys are hard at work, but they don't have... apparently we got one of the experiments working, the Banduric experiment, got it to work. They were trying to test some things and get it all set up so that we could demonstrate it live tonight, as we kind of promised. We said we're setting this up so that if we find something, we can disclose it to the public immediately. We were trying to set that up to do tonight, but we were running into some technical difficulties in getting a live experiment to work properly in demonstration. So basically, we're running through a whole list of experiments right now. Let me get into the database. Let me find this real quick. So we did Biefeld Brown. Here's some pictures from we built capacitor plates, stacked discs. We're trying out the ARV. We talked to Mark McCandlish, had him on to answer a bunch of our in-depth questions on the chats and stuff. So we got APEC conference going on. We had Alzafon's son, David Alzafon, on to talk about his father, Frederick Alzafon's work for on anti-gravity for Boeing Aerospace back in the 80s. Very interesting stuff on nuclear dynamic orientation and spins. I want to get more into this. So anyways, the government's putting together 180 days they have to put together their report on UFOs and stuff, and I find that kind of laughable because none of these people are so busy with running the government and running all this other stuff. I doubt they have any time to really investigate this stuff and give it an honest fair assessment. So I say, all right, we'll let these guys give 180 days to write their report. And in the meantime, I started working on my own report. All right, because I know that the government, whatever we're going to get from the government. Why don't I have a live chat? Is anyone in the live chat? Do we have a live chat going? Let me see. I need to enable live chat. Okay, save that. I don't know why the live chat wasn't enabled. For some reason it shut off my live chat. How did it not have a live chat, dude? How did it disable my fucking live chats? Oh, there we go. Now we got the live chat. I can see. Sweet. All right, cool. Everyone's here, and now I can see the live chat. We got 35 and 39 people watching right now. Hey, thanks guys for watching. Happy New Year, everyone out there. I want to talk more about disclosure and the senators and government people who think that they're going to write a report and have this kind of technology really are really going to get anywhere in terms of their research and stuff. I mean, I've been researching this for 16 years, and I have a bachelor's degree in physics. It's taken me a lot of time to really, sift through this stuff. I doubt that 180 days would be enough for these people to write a report. They don't even have the data, let alone, the way to distill it. So, let's talk a little bit about the military's investigations into UFOs so far. While we're at this, and some of the other people that have investigated UFOs, some of these other study groups that have been out there, and the work that they've done. Like I said, Disclosure Project was probably one of the best ones, and the Orion Project had the right idea with going after and focusing on the anti-gravity and free energy technologies and getting that. Trying to understand that and get that out. And that's something I've been after relentlessly for the past 16 years. And so let me see what we got here. How do I present this? Alt-Enter, right? No, that's not it. I thought Alt-Enter would... Here's a little sneak peek, guys. I really didn't want to show this off. Wanted to keep this under wraps, but I kind of tempted to give you guys a little sneak peek of what I've been working on. So, the government's working on their 180 days for disclosure, and they're going to put out their report. I'm going to have 180 days to do my report, and of course, the public is my intelligence agency, and everyone here is my fact checkers and keep us on the right page here. So we get information wrong, people point that out in the comments, and cheers to all you guys. This beer's for you, for all the people that we get things wrong sometimes, and we admit that, and we face that with pride, and we're all here just to educate ourselves and get smarter. And no one has to be right all the time. We're just trying to get to a place where we can understand things better. So, military UFO timeline. Project Grudge started right after, pretty much after Roswell happened, is when Project Grudge was started. It's interesting. So I'm not sure. I believe Project Grudge was started first, but I'm finding also some signs that Project Sign. It's really hard to nail down an exact, because they have exact dates, but then these projects kind of existed before they officially existed in a limited capacity before these official dates. So researching this stuff can be very difficult. But basically, the Project Grudge was like the Air Force's, it was almost like they had a grudge against UFO cases, and they wanted to debunk all of them. So they set up this department, and they didn't really take these cases seriously. When Major General Cabell was looking in. Charles Cabell was apparently head of the Air Force intelligence at the time, and he was looking into Project Grudge, and Lieutenant Jerry Cummings, who was head of the on the project, not head of it, but he was one of the guys on the project, basically said, yeah, we get these UFO reports and they just sit in a pile, and we basically like come up with any explanation for them, and we just to say that we're officially doing something, but we're not really doing anything. And so he said that, well, this is a joke, and Cabell was furious, and he instituted Edward J. Ruppelt as the new project director, and but meanwhile, they kind of had this other real project, SIGN, going on. It was established by General Nathan Twining, head of the Air Technical Services Command. And interesting, Twining wrote a memo in October of 1947 called the Twining Memo. And in the Twining Memo, basically he says that they don't know. So this is Shulgin wrote this Twining memo to Nathan Twining and George F. Shulgin. Basically, this memo says, it's a interesting memo. It basically says that they're looking into who could produce saucer-type craft, and looking for composite materials to achieve extreme lightweight materials. And they were looking into the whereabouts of the Horton brothers, who invented the Horton Flying V. And that's sort of what they were looking into at that time. So they had recovered something in late 1947, and were trying to pin it down with an Air Force intelligence on where the origins were and what it came from. And they were looking into saucer-shaped craft and a variety of people who could, and aircraft manufacturers and builders who could be responsible for that kind of stuff. So that Project SIGN was like the real saucer project, and then Project Grudge was kind of like this official one that existed in this official capacity to sort of debunk UFOs and reassure the public that they're not real, and try to limit mass hysteria and panic as much as possible, because that's what they had predicted would happen if they were to disclose this information, back then in the late 1940s. So anyways, guys, very interesting. Project Blue Book was then initiated 3 years later in 1952. Late 1951, it kind of took place when they merged Project Grudge and Project SIGN into Project Blue Book. But both these kind of like public and then secret elements sort of existed simultaneously for years through the decades that Blue Book existed for the Air Force. So, you had this one public face of Project Blue Book, which was similar to Project Grudge, where they were basically out to just debunk every UFO report and come up with a natural all UFOs can be explained by natural phenomenon. There's nothing extraterrestrial or extraordinary about them, and that's the public face of this Blue Book that we're going to put on. But unlike Grudge, we're actually going to take a little more serious effort into these cases and really pretend to do like serious investigations, even if that ended very badly for them with Hynek and the swamp gas incident, where he, in front of the gymnasium, where they basically laughed him out of the place, and then Hynek later had a change of heart. But anyways, apparently there was another top secret Project Blue Book that took place under the same name and simultaneously to Project Blue Book later in 52, and we're going to talk about some of this and where this Project Grudge and what these anti-UFO elements within the government developed into. The H.P. Robertson panel was instituted under Project Blue Book, and they basically made a panel of all the best people to investigate UFOs. But it was really headed by this guy H.P. Robertson, who said that civilian UFO groups should be monitored, and people like me should be seriously looked into, because we're talking about serious shit here, and we do real research. We're not just here talking about tall whites out in the desert that someone saw. We're really talking about files and stuff, actionable, verifiable intelligence that people can go and research. So I want to talk about some of the scientists that they compiled on this panel for H.P. Robertson's panel to debunk UFOs, and it's very interesting who they selected and their backgrounds. So one of the physicists was this guy Samuel Goudsmit, And he was famously jointly proposed the concept of electron spin in 1925, and he worked at Brookhaven National Labs in 1952 when they brought him into Project Blue Book and the H.P. Robertson panel. He was famous for Operation Alsos, which was the U.S. intelligence, OSS's attempts to assess the capabilities of the Nazi atomic bomb project. And basically, they collected a bunch of intelligence on what the Nazis were doing with atomic weapons research, and they wrote a paper on it, with some recommendations to intelligence report to the government about what the Nazis were working on. And in this report that Goudsmit helped write, he claimed that the Germans weren't even close, which was wrong. They were. And he reasoned in his report that a totalitarian state like Germany had would inhibit science, and that science couldn't flourish under such extreme and harsh conditions. And that was his reasoning for why he didn't think the Nazis were anywhere close to developing atomic weapons towards the end of World War II. Of course, we now know with the intelligence that we've collected since that they definitely were. The Soviets developed the bomb soon after. So we know that was also wrong. So this guy had a really propensity for basically writing government reports as a scientist and telling the government exactly what they wanted to hear. So yeah, he'd be a perfect guy to pick for a botched government investigation that you didn't really want to find anything. That's what it looks like to me anyway. I don't know what it looks like to you, but he's not. He didn't. He may have been a decent scientist that came up with some interesting things and stuff, but he wasn't very good at intelligence analysis, and he was definitely a guy who was willing to give his superiors what they asked for, which looks like that's what they were going for. The other scientist that they hired was a Louis Walter Alvarez, who was the balloon scientist. He had, they basically went to him and said, look, these idiots don't understand anything about all the work that you've done, all the awesome physics that you've done on developing, weather balloon and radar targets and the satellite and the way to measure winds using these weather balloons and none of these people are idiots, and they don't all these people are idiots. They don't understand any of your important work, and we need, your help to scientifically educate this community of buffoons on real physics and real science. So, Alvarez loved it. He hated these UFO people and jumped right on the opportunity, because that's the way he looked at this. He's like, these people are idiots. They don't understand anything about weather balloon technology, and I can educate them and hopefully teach them something so that they can break out of their ignorance. These people who see these weather balloons and think that they're goddamn alien spaceships flying around. Of course, that doesn't negate the fact that there might be alien spaceships flying around. So anyways, boom. Yeah, so a lot of interesting guys they picked. Another one was Frederick Clark Durant, who was an expert in aviation technology and material science on aircraft and airplanes and stuff. And he was a secretary to the Robertson panel. Big-time CIA guy, and a good pick for their panel. Really hated UFOs and the people that believed him. Very, very right-wing Christian kind of fellow. Very against these sort of outlandish, green men ideas and stuff like that. So he thought he was, again, an intellectual like Bill Nye, thinking he's doing a intellectual service to the world by, debunking UFOs and educating the public on all this other stuff. But really, really, it was all part of a much bigger operation, which we'll get into a little bit. J. Allen Hynek, the most famous, he was actually part of Project Grudge originally, and then later became Project Blue Book, and then after that Project Blue Book Blue Book fell apart, he had a change of heart and actually met with Jack Fillet and he wrote a book called The Edge of Reality, where he's a program report on unidentified flying objects, where it was difficult for him to accept at the time, but maybe there aren't perfect explanations. There are other explanations. So then there's the whole theory of that there was this other Project Blue Book, and we're going to talk about the scientists who were involved in that and the research that I've done into this other Project Blue Book that apparently happened with some debris that was unidentifiable and found at Roswell, New Mexico, and shipped to Wright-Patterson and stored apparently in a place called the Blue Room, which we'll talk about. All the people that knew about the Blue Room, the documents, and some of the going after that. So we all know Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is. We've talked about this on other streams before, but I guess we'll get into it now. So here's Roswell, New Mexico. For guys who want the lowdown on Roswell, everyone thinks that this crash happened in downtown Roswell or at the airfield, which was Walker Air Base at the time, Roswell Army Airfield, RAAF. But it didn't even happen at all there. Actually happened quite a ways away from there, up in a place called Corona. This is about where the crash site is, right here. It's 62 miles from the actual air base itself. And it's about the same distance to Holloman Air Force Base down here at White Sands, which is 88 miles versus 62 miles to Roswell. But anyways, everyone thinks this happened in downtown Roswell. It actually happened in a town called, of all places, Corona, New Mexico. So very interesting. The material was brought back it was picked up in this field. They cordoned off the area. They had military cordons up and down the street. They picked up all the debris. They brought it back to base. They didn't know what it was, so they shipped it to Fort Worth, head of the 8th Air Force of the U.S. Army Command over in Fort Worth, Texas. They sent it to Fort Worth. Apparently, Marcel got there with the material. He claims, and others claim there was a switch of the material.
Hello guys, thanks for subscribing.
Here's General
In
DuBois.
1947, General Ramey's chief of staff was Colonel
So this
Thomas.
is General
This
Ramey
liquid
in
is
the
so
press
much fuel,
conference
but
at
it's
Fort
used by
Worth
the
Army
military
Airfield.
for creating smoke screens.
And
Thomas
this
DuBois.
is General DuBois.
Shortly before
or
he
Major
died,
DuBois,
he was
sorry,
interviewed on
Major
home
DuBois.
video. As a retired brigadier general, he is the highest-ranking officer ever to comment on the Roswell incident.
It was a cover story. The balloon part of it is the story that's to be given to the press, and that is it, and anything else, forget it. And McMullen, if you ever knew him, if you told him that he wanted to run something, he goddamn sure ran it. He knew every facet of the operation. He's a busybody. He wanted to know what the hell was going on, who was pissing on the sidewalk, and all that sort of thing.
General McMullen, the deputy head of...
Right. So he'll testify is right here that
You are not to discuss this, and this is a point of which this is more than top secret, as he said. It's beyond that. It's within my priority as deputy to George Kenney, and he in turn responsible to the president. This is the highest priority you can exist, and you will say nothing, and that's the end of it. And Jesus, that's in the commander-in-chief, and you forgot about it.
Yeah, so he says that there was a material switch. It wasn't the same material. Major Jesse Marcel said the same exact thing. He was the Air Force intelligence officer on base at Roswell Army Airfield. Picked up the debris and handled it. There's a bunch of new stuff on the History Channel now, going over this Ramey memo and a whole bunch of other stuff with Roswell. Really cool stuff, but they don't have half the information that I've put together on Roswell, and I'm still going through. So my interest has always been in Roswell is that memory foil, that material. Was there a material switch, and what happened to that original memory foil and that material from Roswell, and tracing and back that and trying to figure out where that went and finding out as much about that, right? So what I found is that this company called Battelle, who was the in Ohio. So let's go back to our map there for a second. Yeah, let's go back to the map, right? So Fort Worth, they held this press conference. They bring in this material. It's not the same material. They switch it out at Fort Worth, right? They hold this press conference. General Ramey shows his weather balloon and radar target. They got the weather balloon there, the radar target here. Got Major Du Bois. He's got Major Marcel in the office. Major Marcel, says, all right, well, I guess the whole thing's over. We just misidentified a weather balloon. My career as an Air Force intelligence officer, and I couldn't identify a freaking weather balloon. I had to fly it all the way to Fort Worth and meet with a general to determine that it was actually a weather balloon. Meanwhile, that was the fake story. The real material went from Fort Worth, and it was flown from Fort Worth to Dayton, Ohio, where it was flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. All right, and according to many of the scientists who worked on it there, it was stored in an underground facility at Wright-Patterson, which is very interesting. Where's the thing on that? I'm going to go back to that and talk about this. So apparently they said it was Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Exon. He's head of the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson. He testifies that this spacecraft and bodies were recovered and stored in an underground facility at Wright-Pat. There's a Wiley teletype saying, the FBI was tracing this, and that the materials had been sent to Fort Worth, and that the other material had been the weather balloon had been sent to Wright Field for investigation, right? Apparently, but the FBI didn't necessarily believe that it was a weather balloon, and that it, why would, there's a lot of the things in the story that don't make sense. So anyways, looking into this, where it went to at Wright Field, this underground facility, it turns out that right around 1948, an entirely new off-grid facility and campus was constructed with underground tunnels right next to Wright-Patterson Airfield, the old Walker Airfield, which is right here. Okay, so this was the old Wright-Patterson Airfield, and then this is like the new base that they had built over here that came later. But this was the old, this is now home to the National Air Force History Museum. But this was the old Walker Airfield, and this was where Wright State University is today. This is where the campus was originally built in the underground tunnel system with this series of buildings. That weren't connected to everything, completely off the grid. There was a medical kind of hospital and facility there for doing some kind of medical operations and procedures. And then there was this entire underground facility right next to Wright-Patterson that is present day Wright State University. And you can go on the Wright State University website and get pictures of these tunnels. And even on their campus map, they're all, everything's connected. Even in the dead of winter, it's warm under there, and you can walk around in shorts to each one of your classes and through these underground tunnels, which were all built in the late 1940s for this secret research facility, and that basically is like almost like a university that they built in and of itself, which is very interesting. Present day, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is home to the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, NASIC, and also the Air Force Institute of Technology. So a lot of really cutting-edge scientific and technical research goes on here currently. That's what happens here. Very interesting. We got 18 minutes till the ball drops. So there's a theory that that they had this material and that they chose for reasons of outlined by Alvin Toffler in his book Future Shock, that it might not be a good idea to open Pandora's box. You might want to seal this stuff up right now and really keep it classified and not tell the American public about this, and in fact not even tell the FBI, because as we've subsequent investigations have found, J. Edgar Hoover and his two right-hand men, Guy Hotel and I forget this dude's name, but he was I had it written down. But anyways, these guys were investigating. We have the FBI documents that they were still looking into, flying saucers and the stuff as late as 54, into the 1950s, trying to trace down where this material went and still looking into it. But they weren't even told or given any information about this. It's really gone into the hands of what who is it? Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell said that He said the information is now held primarily within a body of semi or quasi-private organizations that have kind of spun off from the military intelligence organizations of the past. There have been private groups involved with the issue for a number of years because they have the expertise. So, Battelle is a semi or quasi-private organization. Battelle was spun off from the military intelligence organizations of the past. In fact, it's recently been learned that the Battelle's director at the time of the Roswell crash was Clyde Williams. Williams was at the same time serving on the government's Research and Development Board as a trustee of the RAND Corporation. RAND Corporation. So if you guys don't know, aren't familiar with the RAND Corporation, you might want to look them up. They're another one of these old school military contractors in the intelligence and military industrial complex that were around at Roswell and have been around since. Williams worked at the R&D board of RAND Corporation along with Eric Walker and a guy named Dr. Robert Sarbacher, both whom later indicated their personal knowledge of the Roswell crash event. Very interesting thing. Both those guys, Eric Walker and Dr. Robert Sarbacher. Robert Sarbacher, I have him in here. Let me find him. Here, Robert Sarbacher wrote a book on hyper and ultra high frequency engineering. And this was back in the 50s, writing books on how to engineer super high frequency waves and like terahertz stuff. They were doing some really interesting high energy research on physics waves back then. Some of the most cutting edge stuff. Another guy I found is John von Neumann. Here's him wearing a funny hat. Apparently he liked to wear funny hats. He was a man who wore a lot of different hats in his life. He was a Manhattan Project physicist. He held the highest level security clearances in 1947, worked at, I think, Los Alamos National Laboratories at the time. Some people claim that he was flown into Roswell to actually examine the crash site and the craft. They wouldn't have brought in high-level people. They wanted to keep it, they didn't bring any generals into Roswell. The General LeMay flew in one of his lieutenants, colonels, it was a bunch of lieutenants and lieutenant colonels that went to the Roswell site. If you do the research, they didn't send a bunch of generals. But right after Roswell, this guy John von Neumann, he wrote a paper on devising von Neumann machines, which were self-replicating automata, machines that could build copies of themselves, and he advocated that as a way to mine and colonize the universe, just sending out a bunch of these droids to go do the work for you. Very interesting stuff. He developed some of the first computers and other machines alongside J. Robert Oppenheimer. There was another scientist who worked at, he was a civilian engineer who worked at Wright-Patterson along with Robert Goddard. His name was Alfred Loading, and Loading worked on a lot of saucer-shaped craft and experimental aircraft and trying out saucer-shaped vehicles for the U.S. Air Force in this around the same time. The Battelle report. So into this Battelle stuff, very interesting research that we've done here. Let me pull up the actual Battelle report. So this was a contract from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base given to Battelle, covering the period from September and October of 1949. And this was the second progress report, it says. Here I have a copy of it in front of me. And no copy of the first progress report has ever been found. So there's apparently a first progress report that was written as a pretext to this, which is referenced in the document and referenced in several other Battelle documents. So some people had access to this first progress report, but then the first progress report's missing and no one can find any copies of it, and it's gone from the history books and from the record, which is really quite interesting, because the second progress report, which refers to this first progress report, it really looks like they were trying to reverse engineer or decompose a material that was foreign to them, that they didn't know or understand at the time. Anyone who reads this, and looks through it, they're trying to test and reverse engineer an alloy that they've never seen or heard of before, or kind of, and they're trying to figure it out. And the way that the methods that they use to try and figure this out, it talks about one of these guys, John Elroy Center, worked on this report. Elroy Center, his family was later contacted by researchers looking back into all this stuff, and his daughter said that, yeah, he told me a weird story one time about, he used to always talk about ETs, and aliens and stuff, but he said that, he was given this piece of this stuff and he thinks it was alien, and that's pretty interesting. So the John Elroy Center's family members and stuff said that, he talked about this material that he worked on for Battelle, trying to do these, engineering and experiments on to try and understand what the stuff was. Very interesting thing. So I want to talk about some of the experiments that they did and what those experiments look like. I found a video from this guy called Chemical Force, and it's talking about the titanium tetrachloride method for analyzing titanium. And I'll show that to you guys real quick so you guys can see. Inside this test tube, he's got some solid chlorine, and it starts melting and turning to liquid. So you can see that it's the liquid phase on the top. This is pure chlorine. So they ignite this titanium on this thing, they start it burning, and then they drop it in. They drop that hot burning titanium into the chlorine, and it creates titanium tetrachloride, which immediately reacts with the moisture in the air and creates all these fumes. That's what you see there. So this basically shows what they did with that. They would have taken a piece of that chunk of that Roswell titanium material, and they would have dropped it in chlorine, pure chlorine. They ignited it and dropped it in chlorine with this method, and then they would have taken. And then if you read this report and go over it, it talks about the methods that they used to build an apparatus. They built a whole apparatus for basically they did this sample, and then they pull off all the gases, and then they separate out all the gases and analyze the gases that come off of this sample. So when they take this, it's a destructive test. These guys it was the 40s. They didn't know what the heck they were doing with this stuff, trying to figure out what the hell they were looking at, man. It's really fascinating reading this and the assemblies and the stuff that they came up with. They came up with this whole process for analyzing the gases that came off of this metal when they reacted it, just so they could figure out what the heck this stuff was. Again, he talks about this oxygen and titanium tetrachloride method. That's what that is. Very interesting stuff on titanium too, like the process for refining it. He wrote this whole report on another way to process the purifying titanium. So the way that they purify titanium in this arc, well, it's really, really cool. You can watch a video on that too. If you go to how titanium sponge is made, right? So titanium production in Germany. This is a good video. It'll show you all about how they produce titanium and the whole method, and it describes this whole from the extraction process. Yeah, the Kroll method. This video is another one, the Kroll method. So go check this out if you guys want to learn more about the science of exactly how this process worked. But they were analyzing this with destructive methods at the time, and I want to point out that was interesting because I don't think it would have got them very far with what they were looking at the time, although they didn't know at the time what the hell they were looking at. I don't even know if half the government understands what they're looking at even still. So anyways, the Blue Room, where all this stuff was apparently stored and kept by the Air Force at Wright-Patterson. This guy, Barry Goldwater, Senator Barry Goldwater, went after the Blue Room, trying to get in there, and was denied freedom of information requests when he called up General LeMay and asked to get in there and have access. He basically cursed him out and said he'd be court-martialed if he asked again. So there was this Blue Room. They denied its existence first. And then they later admitted the existence, that there was a Blue Room, but all the records and all the materials from it and evidence were all destroyed on here. It says the date where all this stuff was destroyed too. It gives you they give the date where apparently all this stuff was destroyed. So very interesting. Like when they first they denied it existed, then once people found out about it, they went and destroyed everything, or removed it and then destroyed it. Even though the National Accounting Office says that they have no record of anything being recovered from Roswell or received. They went through great lengths to cover this up. It looks like if something did happen there. Again, paperclip scientists. There were a couple that this guy Dr. Ernst Steinhoff. He was a second to Werner von Braun, and he had a lot of interesting comments that he made about Roswell and materials that were recovered from there later in his life, along with Hermann von Oberth, von Braun's mentor. He gave an 1954 interview with the American Weekly where he said, "It's my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. I think that they possibly are manned by intelligent observers who are members of a race that may have been investigating our Earth for centuries. I think that they possibly have been sent out to conduct systematic long-range investigations, first of men, animals, and vegetation, and more recently of atomic centers, armaments, and centers of armament production. They obviously have not come as invaders, but I believe their present mission may be one of scientific investigation." Very interesting comments from a very high-level person. Then we have Walter Paparidel, the German V2 rocket scientist, gave another interview in Life magazine in 1952 where he said, "I'm convinced that saucers have an out-of-this-world basis." Again, coming from someone that would have been in the know at the time. But by far of all the people that I've investigated and come across and looked into in relation to this with the science in the science community and the scientists, I think the best is the most interesting is by far John Archibald Wheeler. And John Archibald Wheeler, here you can be seen walking with Einstein. He collaborated with Einstein. I think this is Bose and that's Mills. Not exactly sure who the other guys are. But anyways, he was Richard Feynman's PhD advisor at Princeton. He coined a lot of stuff in quantum physics. He's famous for quantum foam, quantum non-locality, and the quantum eraser, which are all really advanced stuff for him to be have been involved with back in like the 50s and 60s when he did a lot of this research. He was a Battelle contractor. We have John's Archibald Wheeler's FBI file. Very interesting when that came out, and the amount of stuff that's still redacted from there. He held 6 top secret security clearances at the time, and was involved in numerous special access programs for the military-industrial complex, including ones for Battelle. He was an expert metallurgist, and he would be one of the first people that would have been after guys like Elroy John Center, exhausted their methods of burning the stuff in chlorine and reacting all their chemistry, knowledge and everything. They would have gone to a guy like Wheeler to what the heck is this stuff and what's going on? Like Wheeler would have been the go-to guy. The only problem with Wheeler, and you read this in the FBI file, is that these materials never left Ohio. They never left Battelle. They were such high security clearances they could never really be allowed out. And the problem is that John Archibald Wheeler never left Princeton. He liked Princeton. He didn't want to leave New Jersey. He just wanted to stay in Princeton. And so that posed a problem for Battelle and the researchers so they had to use a go-between. And the names of the go-betweens all redacted in the FBI file. But they used a go-between to basically relay information from Battelle and from the metallurgy that was going on at Wright-Patterson to this guy Wheeler, who is like the brain of brains at the time. I mean, he was like Einstein. He was a colleague of Einstein, and he knew so much about so much stuff. This quantum non-locality stuff in and of itself is kind of just blows my mind. Basically, like the universe is flat. It's this makes me think of like that end scene at the end of Men in Black, where the aliens jump through a locker, and and it's just like a whole other dimension and world inside there, and it all just exists in this, it's all just flat space. You know what I mean? It's all just a fucking ball. It's all just a sphere with infinite reflections and being played in by a fucking alien in the fifth dimension. Wheeler, incredible life's work, but I definitely think he knew more than he let on, and he was involved in some of this stuff from the information that I've gathered, and that his research into this went through the 60s. Lot of interesting stuff related to Wheeler that comes out, because Wheeler was investigating like spin nuclear orientation, and there was a lot of research being done in the 60s into trying to figure out understanding superconductors, gravitational drag, and these momentum kind of things. So there's a couple papers you guys can look up. One is by Bryce DeWitt. And DeWitt was a colleague of Wheeler. He wrote the Wheeler-DeWitt equation along with Wheeler. Bryce DeWitt was doing all the work into quantum gravity, real cutting-edge stuff, writing papers on superconductors and gravitational drag back in 1966. Decades before other people, like Podkletnov, were talking about this kind of stuff. This was published in 1979 on Gravitational Conductors, Waves, and Circuits by W.H. Press. Again, other interesting things in the literature about research being done related to these individuals, and related to anti-gravity and stuff like that. Let me jump ahead real quick. So, so much stuff here, bro. All right, so this is kind of interesting because it relates to the rotating Mercury and spin gravity research going on at General Electric during the 60s and 50s and 60s, which is really interesting. More so in the 60s with this guy. He's a GE engineer named Henry William Wallace, who lived in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. You can look him up. Did a lot of research with General Electric on rotating masses and rotating bodies, and the possibility of those producing, electric and gravitomagnetic fields and stuff. As you know, the maglev was invented by a guy named Eric Lathwaite in 1962, and maglev trains became a reality and a thing, and that was interesting because this guy was fascinated with anti-gravity. He became, really devoted to a lot of anti-gravity research all throughout later in his life, and including late into the 80s. Worked with a guy named Dr. Myron Evans and this Sandy Kid device, which was that gyroscopic thing we tested in the lab. Remember that those friggin' wheels and the gyroscopes that were flipping around? We built a better model of that now, and we're going to test that out. Hopefully for you guys soon. We built a much better actuator and ways to hold these motors and stuff. But yeah, this guy researched this up into, late into his life, Eric Lathwaite, and there were a bunch of people looking into this type of way to beat gravity, and including NASA with their Gravity Probe B, and then how this branches off into, nuclear spin alignment and nuclear gravity, spin aligned nuclei and gravity, and of course, Eugene Podkletnov with his rotating superconductor device that he claimed produced anti-gravity fields, and the famous NASA replications with Dr. Ning Lee and AC gravity, and a host of these scientists that were involved in the NASA replications of that work. Some information on the setups, and we're of course trying to those experiments ourselves as well as the impulse gravity gun, which was another super interesting thing. So yeah, that's kind of sums up most of the research into anti-gravity, except for the Alzaphan stuff. which I think is very much, kind of pulls a lot of this dynamic nuclear orientation together with the research that was being done, up until the 80s on trying to figure out how this stuff worked. I think this kind of defeats a lot of the ideas, because I'm trying to, there's a whole idea that there's a secret space program that these Nazis that were involved, von Braun and all these, these guys that they basically, they were the ones responsible for the Roswell technology. They brought it over here from Germany, and that it's been this secret facet of, these Nazi paperclip scientists that have been doing all this stuff. And, it's kind of like whether it's unbeknownst to the rest of the United States government, it's almost like this top secret faction of Nazis, and then there's that whole secret space program theory that has emerged from that. And I don't necessarily believe that, because, one of the main problems with that theory is the nanotechnology side of this, and understanding, how this stuff's constructed and what they were looking at as far as materials. Which, let's talk about this. So comparing optical compatibility and capabilities, right? So the human eye can see about down to, the human hair. You can see a little bit smaller than a human hair, and then, your vision just kind of like, you can't see human blood. You need a microscope in order to see really small stuff in magnification. And then even the microscopes, with using photons and lights, they can only go down so far. You can see a bacteria and, some of these parameciums and amoebas and stuff floating around in water. But once you get really small, like the cell, like, you can see, you can see parts of the cell, I guess. And then, once you start really getting into cells and trying to distinguish what's going on in the cells, your optical capabilities kind of diminish, and you're not able to see much without even optical resolution, even with microscopes. And so you have to go to then electron microscopes in order to see really, really small things, all the way down to individual atoms, including this little tardigrade right here. So SEMs and the scanning electron microscope imaging and that kind of technology, this was the first SEM machine. It was developed in 1933 by a German scientist who went to work for the Soviets, and this guy Manfred von Arden. And he actually worked on the Soviet atomic bomb project later on. But he's credited with the electron microscope work. And this guy Vladimir is working, kind of advanced this. He advanced the imaging capabilities, and also he developed the first kinescope. Sorry, it was a first video recording device, and he actually developed the first television. This is a picture of the first television set in like 1924 or something. Very interesting that's him with the first TV. So they were trying these optical imaging before they could do it. You could see this stuff, but you'd have to see it with your eye. So you put so very interesting, the SEM technology. So in order to get SEM technology is what they need to really get down and dirty and see what the heck they were looking at with these materials and what, so they can get down to the finer detail. Here's a snowflake, so you can zoom in on the snowflake and see like the levels of detail and inspection that you can get into just a snowflake. Just imagine what they were looking at when they unlocked some of these alien metals and materials. They would not have the imaging capability to take pictures of the stuff. They would have been able to see it through a microscope lens if they had an SEM imaging machine. They weren't commercially available until, the 60s is when 1965 is when the stereo scan came available with the first, and that was with CRT monitors and really old, limited equipment. And it's nothing like the, the LCD and the imaging technology that we have nowadays. So assuming that, a couple let's say Battelle had one of these machines and they sent it to Battelle, they wouldn't have been able to get pictures of they wouldn't have gotten these nice photograph scans like they had back then. It was just basically looking at this stuff through a lens and seeing, the blown up image of this electron microscope phase scan on a wall, that whatever that, it reflects it onto a backdrop and you can see it like that. Anyways, that's what they would have had. They wouldn't have had this advanced stuff. So this is what they would have, the limits that they would have had when trying to look at, these materials. And if what I think is true about it, these alien materials and how their technology works, is that most of it's built on the atomic level. It's literally built atom by atom, and it works on. Oh, hey, Happy New Year, guys. We're here. It's. I didn't even notice it. It's been 8 minutes, and I didn't even notice. We're already in 2021. Happy New Year, guys. But anyways, there's a whole list of material effects that occur with solid state physics and the interactions of atoms and materials that are in solid state or liquid state, and some these liquid crystal states too. A lot of really weird stuff going on in the atomic world at those levels. We talk about Project Rainbow, the CIA's effort to map the electromagnetic spectrum and understand how electromagnetic resonance works, how materials interact with the electromagnetic field, and therefore how to build materials that can, defy or, cause interesting interactions with electromagnetic field, especially radar waves. And so building radar-proof materials was a big part of the research that was done out at Area 51 during those times, based on a lot of this technology and understandings of science. Of course, HARP is itself a metamaterial. It's a bunch of antennas that are aligned in a grid pattern to create, resonance effects, and it's used to disrupt over-the-horizon radar and communications. So this is the Russian woodpecker device. People can look that up. It was an over-the-horizon communication device for Russia, an early one. It was causing signal interference on a lot of people picking this thing up on a lot of their signals in the U.S. and reporting it. And they eventually, the intelligence agencies tracked it and figured out what it was. But anyways, these are metamaterials. They're basically like structures that are producing these effects through that create these hyper resonances and wave effects through the structure of the way that the antennas and the electrical systems are made. Interesting stuff about the orbiter project. So the guys that were involved in Roswell, a lot of the air intelligence people and Air Force people and staff that were involved in Roswell were later actually involved in the orbiter project 7 years later, which was basically our U.S.'s first attempts at a space program. So these guys, I really feel like they knew we needed a space program, and guys like Vandenberg, really laid down the groundwork for to build the modern day space program and to develop this to where it is. Although I don't know if all their dreams were seen through, because a lot of these guys, built this stuff and set this stuff up, but then other people took it over and they didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle or all the information about why this was going on, and it just makes me a little curious about what was really happening here. Ames Research Laboratories out in California turned in would later become NASA. Vandenberg Air Force Base down in Santa Barbara is a whole NASA U.S. Air Force space facility there. Working with what would become later the National Reconnaissance Office, where all the spy satellites were launched out of, and a lot of development in the military, space applications for military applications. The Hubble Space Telescope for looking into deep space, and a variety of other spy satellites like the Kennan spy satellites. There's a number of these Kennan satellites, which were used by the NRO and a lot of other intelligence collections agencies to in the early secret space program, the real secret space program, just for spying and looking at intelligence collection and being able to see what's going on around the world. In 1997, the famous Philip J. Corso publishes a book called The Day After Roswell, and he claims that he was head of the U.S. Army's R&D and the Foreign Technology Desk at Wright-Patterson, all the right places, all the right connections. although he gets a lot of the science wrong, he gets a lot of stuff wrong in the book. Was heavily criticized for that by a number of individuals. Was one of the first books I read when looking into this, and made me just write off Roswell for years. I didn't even want to look into Roswell or pay any attention to Roswell because of this book and because of the disservice that this man did to the science, and the really baseless claims that he made in this book, which I feel was put out for disinformation purposes to really, like, as part of the cover-up. I really feel like this was he might have been some guy who was in the know that was really trying to get something out there, but I doubt it from what he released and what it's caused. I don't think that he was one of the good guys trying to, say what he saw and get information out there. I think that this was an attempt to kind of muddy the waters and confuse researchers. Fiber optics were developed, long before 47. The transistor, as mentioned before, it was scientists working on this. There was German scientists working on all the solid state physics theory that were required for solid state electronics and semiconductor physics. This guy Walter Schottky, you can read all his, papers from the 30s and decades before Roswell. He was working on the science of this stuff and was pretty on point with it. The nitinol wire thing, I likewise had dismissed that for years because the claims that Corso had made about nitinol wire. Of course, there's much more to be said about nitinol wire and much more digging that needs to be done. I really need to get some expert metallurgists on to kind of hash that one out a little bit more, because the nitinol wire thing is probably the best of all the things that he avoids discussions in nanotechnology and a lot of that kind of deep physics and deep science research, which is curious. But the nitinol wire story is very curious because that Battelle document right here talks about purifying alloys. It even has a phase diagram for nickel titanium alloys. And in one of these, I don't know if it's in this report, there was a phase diagram for nickel titanium alloys, and so that very definitely looks like they were trying to create these alloys. They were trying to reproduce alloys that didn't exist that they were trying to create. So a lot of evidence that shows like that nitinol was an attempt to reverse engineer something else, and that it wasn't a completely natural discovery as claimed. Although I still need to do like more thorough research into that, and I want to get some more experts on that to really comment and guide me through it. Corso, again, 97. I thought that was a big dud. 98, the year after that, is when Ed Fouché presented to IUFOC. He's one of the first people to talk about metamaterials and quasicrystals. Certainly the first former Area 51 employee to talk about those kinds of things. I found his work through a video on the secrets, the case for anti-gravity. It was called The Case for Anti-Gravity, and a guy mentioned this stuff at the end. I went and looked into this. Eventually ended up meeting Ed Fouché and befriending him, talking to him on Skype and on many phone conversations in quite a large amount of depth. He didn't have the real detailed, in-depth scientific knowledge, but he definitely knew people and definitely knew things that other people didn't know, and had information that has led to a lot more actionable, intelligence and a lot better research. When I started looking into metamaterials and quasicrystals, when I first found this stuff around like 2002, first started getting into it, that's when I started, I realized, there's something definitely more to this. Nobody else was talking about these metamaterials or this invisibility technology before this guy, and I really thought it was amazing that a lot of other stuff he said, we didn't, where there's a lot of disagreements and arguments still to this day over the TR-3B, that flying triangle, whether it's a real craft. Is the government ever going to disclose it? No, it's nuclear powered. They never, there's treaties against that kind of stuff. They'll never disclose it, sort of thing. And then just a big debate on whether it's a real craft or not, which I really don't care to get into because, it's not on me to disclose it, and it's just on me to try to understand how it works. And of course, the details of the propulsion system that Ed gave were completely wrong and don't make any physical sense, and is not something we can actually test or try in our laboratory. And there's no theory really to go along with it other than the stuff that I found out tangential and subsequent to my work with Ed Fouché. But anyways, the metamaterial stuff, super interesting. Ways to create invisibility using C-ring resonators, these types of resonators and resonator arrays. If you build them arrays of these resonators, they can block incoming radiation of those frequencies. And of course, if you build, array inside a C-ring resonator inside a C-ring resonator inside a C-ring resonator, like a big number of layers of these things in intertwined inside of each other. The bandwidth for the bypass goes up considerably, so that you're able to block out or be invisible to a larger bandwidth, a frequency range, a large spectrum of frequencies, rather than just one single C-ring resonator loop being tuned to a single frequency. You have a whole bunch of these loops which are tuned to a range of frequencies, so that you can be invisible to a large range of frequencies or multiple frequencies at once, which is, I think, it could be very much related to how they propel themselves also. Research, of course, we're still doing on this. Yeah, no evidence for this TR3B yet. We had that fake Tom DeLonge video where it teleports and blows the bubble around it that he showed on Joe Rogan. We have that disinformation patent. I think it's disinformation. There's some people that disagree with me, and although I just was very curious that 3 days after Ed Fouché died, this patent appears on, goes viral on the internet, and everyone, and then all the search results for TR3B, you can't find anything on the original, Mercury or the plasma or Ed Fouché. All you find is this John Quincy St. Clair patent and a bunch of other disinformation people that have copied the story since Ed Fouché. But Ed Fouché was the original to talk about that flying triangle in the TR3B, and everyone else who copied him after is pretty much a copycat. Unless they I don't know of anyone that had any real information or any evidence for that craft. So I'm still waiting on evidence for it. And but anyways, Thomas Townsend Brown, we know about that. This is back to the anti-gravity stuff. I have to reorganize some of this. This is helping me a lot going over it. Let's go into some more material science and stuff. So let's get into real nuts and bolts on some materials. Aerogels. Very cool substance these aerogels are. They're super lightweight. They were actually developed in like the 20s or 30s by a chemist who was working with, interesting material. They're mostly air. They're mostly hollow air, and apparently he was able to create these materials. They're super resistant to heat. You can use them as heat shields. You can basically wrap your hand in this stuff. There's a video on it. The guy wraps his hand in it and puts a blowtorch right on his hand, and he's burning the crap out of his hand, and it doesn't even burn his hand because this stuff is so good at heat absorption and reduction. So anyways, these aerogels, this stuff called Luft sponge, it's porous. And I thought that was interesting because there were some witnesses from Roswell who reported handling that material, that metal from Roswell, and they said that you could blow through it. They said the air would just go right through it. You could blow on it, and you could blow through the material. It was a super lightweight, super strong kind of metal mesh kind of material, but you could blow through it. Well, this is the first material I've seen that is anything like that. It's called Luft sponge, and there's a bunch of different these open cell porous titanium sponges. It's not the same as titanium sponge, like the sponge cake that comes right out of the from that process we described before. It's not like this Kroll method sponge, right? This is a little different. So this will show you how the titanium sponge forms. This is how they make and purify titanium. In case you're wondering, this video right here. I'll post it in the description so people can check that out. How's everyone doing tonight? Everyone excited for 2021 and real disclosure finally? Information that's going to come out. Yeah, the spinning mercury stuff. I want to do some more experiments with spinning mercury. Again, that was the GE research, and that guy Henry William Wallace, the spinning mercury stuff. Be interesting to do some experiments with that and see where it goes. But again, I'm not super hopeful for that. This titanium, porous titanium and open cell titanium. These things are 3D printed with titanium, I believe. I don't know if they're how they exactly make this stuff. A lot of it's proprietary, but this looks like 3D printed metal, and it's completely hollow. You could blow through it, but it's structurally sound. It almost looks like a microphone cover or something. It's weird. Yeah. So bakelite. Why am I talking about bakelite? Well, you talk about the Roswell witnesses. Jesse Marcel, the video we have of Jesse Marcel talking about this material, he describes it as bakelite. Oh, so bakelite is phenol mixed with formaldehyde at the right temperature and pressure, and it's very sensitive to temperature and pressure, the way this stuff forms and getting it to be, come out perfect and stuff. But it was an early plastic. Basically, they could colorize it and do all kinds of stuff. This old telephones and that black plastic stuff that was like, I have an old soldering gun that's made of bakelite. It's basically a transformer with bakelite wrapped around it for a handle, and it's the best soldering gun on the market. You can't buy soldering guns like that anymore. But bakelite is really cool stuff. But these composite materials that are coming out now, super lightweight, super strong. How would people in 1947 describe a material like this? They would have nothing else to compare it to, nothing else to describe it, to compare it next to. So they used, I really feel like they used whatever they thought was available at the time. Like bakelite was a perfectly good way to describe some of these composite materials. And these composite materials are also described in the Shulgin Twining memo from the U.S. Air Force, talking about, extreme lightweight. Very interesting stuff. But these materials are becoming commercially available. They're more widespread. And amazing materials are coming out every day. These shape retention alloys I thought was super interesting. This is related to that nitinol wire stuff. Nitinol wire goes into, you have these phases where metal phases where you can bend things and deform them, and then they go back into these original phases of the metal, which is fascinating, that it has the spring and elasticity built into the tension and the stress of the actual metal lattice itself. So I think as our understanding of metallurgy and solid state physics advances, we're going to be able to create material like that Roswell foil and that Roswell material. I've already seen these videos on amorphous metal and bulk metallic glass. Some of these foils, they look very, very much like that Roswell metal. In fact, I have some of that metal here with me. Hear how it sounds. And you can bend this stuff, pretty, I wouldn't crease it, like hard, but it bounces back into shape pretty effectively, unlike conventional aluminum foil or other foils. It's very flexy. Very interesting material, this amorphous metal, metallic glass. So metallic glass, they have a very high elastic limit as well as strength. So they outperform titanium alloys, steels, silica wood, and polymers. There's a company called Liquid Metal technologies, and they're developing some really interesting products using glass, amorphous metal glass alloys. And that's interesting too, because a lot of Roswell witnesses described the metal as being glass-like. It was like a metal that was like almost like a glass. It was shiny and like almost like glass, like and a lot of the crystal structures, and a lot of the witnesses reports very eerily similar to some of these more advanced types of technologies that we're now coming across as we start to dig into the nanoscale and understand the physics of tiny things and on the small level, and how important those are. So spin glasses, another very interesting thing that a material that exists in nature is you take you have this glass with these aligned metals in these lattices, and then if you take certain doping and you put certain atoms inside this lattice, if you just basically you're just punching little holes in the lattice and putting certain things with certain spins in there that you want. And you can create these spin glasses, which have these very interesting properties. You can lock these certain types of other atoms in, which have these very unique spin properties, and you can lock spin. You can basically lock a orbital spin, an atomic spin, into materials by artificially inserting these atoms inside the lattices. And you can create these materials called spin glasses, which have very interesting nonlinear properties when reacting with electric and magnetic fields, and can create some very interesting effects and some very interesting states of matter. The spin glasses, spin optical glass, again, talking about anti-ferromagnetic and ferromagnetic materials. These are materials that line up with a magnetic field. You put an external magnetic field, and they line up, or they anti-align, or they just do nothing. So, but there's ways to intimately control exactly what these materials do on an atomic level, and they create some very interesting effects. Spin glasses, strange metals, and Fermi liquids, and also what are called fermionic spin metals. Very interesting states of matter with very interesting and strange quantum properties that are we're still unsure exactly the extent in which we can tap these and utilize these properties in nature, and to what ends. Dimensional crystals. Figured it's important to mention photonics and dimensional crystals and kind of show people the difference. So a 1D stack of wafers. So you stack wafers on each other, like it creates this a 1D dimensional crystal. Then they have these, other experiments where they use forests of carbon nanotubes, right? So a forest of carbon nanotubes, right? And you'll find these are 2D materials. These are 2D metamaterials. So right here is like a 2D metamaterial. It's a bunch of blocks. So that's an example of a two-dimensional metamaterial. And then there's 3D crystals where the metamaterial is actually just like a very coherent 3D crystal. And those are the most advanced types of dimensional crystals, and photonic crystals are the three-dimensional ones. So we're right here experimenting with 1D and 2D stuff, just trying to, understand the basic core science of this stuff. This is where, aliens and Roswell material is at. That's where we're trying to get. Again, they could be, 1, 2, and 3-dimensional crystals, but they're not limited to 1, 2, and 3-dimensional crystals. They can actually be hyperdimensional. You can have higher dimensional crystals, what are called quasi-crystals and aperiodic crystals. Very interesting stuff. If you wanted to access higher dimensions, this would be one way to possibly do it, because these crystals actually exist in a higher dimensional state. They're like higher dimensional almost. They're basically a 3D representation of a 5-dimensional or higher dimensional objects. if you can think of like a hypercube, you know, this projection onto 3D space of a 4D object, it's kind of like almost what quasi-crystals are. They're hyperdimensional crystals projected onto 3D space. And they have very interesting properties. They can trap light and improve communications technologies, as we see in this article by Eric Quinones. They can bend fiber optic and light signals at 90-degree angles without losing any signal quality. You can utilize them for 5D data storage. So data hard drives and data storage within these crystals. So it just makes me like amazed that, you know, these scientists, the 1940s scientists, you know, melted this stuff down in chlorine, in liquid chlorine, and then measured the gases that came off it to try to analyze what this stuff was and how it worked. That's how primitive their methods were for trying to understand these materials and then the depths of what was going on here. It just goes to show you that, you know, these destructive methods, they would have destroyed all the information on these 5D data storage hard drives by reacting them, and they wouldn't have gotten any of that information. They would have just got some basic chemical and isotope analysis, which they could have done through, you know, spectroscopy and imaging techniques available to the modern world. They weren't available in the 1940s. So it just goes to show you, these people that think like the Nazis and they have all this stuff figured out, they really don't understand science. They really don't understand how science has progressed and where it's come from and where we're at with it and our understandings of these things. So it's a key part of it. Again, these types of materials, there's different types of materials which host these types of interesting particles and particle fields. And so we're starting to, this is where material science and quantum mechanics meet. It's a domain at that sub-spectrum. So there's actually, you know, a gap here called the terahertz gap, and that's where photonics and electronics are trying to merge. And there's a big effort right now within technology to merge that gap in photonics and electronics so that we can create new technologies using these highly advanced photonics. And that gets me to another thing I want to let's go and right now we're going to switch gears. Let's talk about this for a second. All right. I want to talk about phase conjugate mirrors for a second. I want to talk about, I'm going to have a slide in here on phase conjugate mirrors. So I wanted to talk about phase conjugate mirrors for a second. And I'll show you guys a video. Let's show you the video first, and then I'll explain kind of what's going on here. So phase conjugate mirror, let me find a picture of one. I can describe this a little bit better. All right, here's a conventional mirror. A light source bounces off the mirror, and it bounces off at the same angle that it approached. So you approach this angle, it bounces off at that same angle, and you get a reflection. On a phase conjugate mirror, it's kind of like a mirror that no matter which way you turn it, or you always see your reflection in the mirror. So, you know, in a regular mirror, you turn the mirror and you start seeing around what you could see around the corners and see around walls and stuff because you're seeing the reflection at an angle off the mirror, the surface of the mirror. But these phase conjugate mirrors, you just picture it like no matter which angle you turn the mirror, you see your reflection in the mirror. It's kind of a weird kind of mirror, right? But they exist, these phase conjugate mirrors. And it turns out they got some really, really weird and cool properties. They go into resonance, and just check this out. So first they find the focal point on the, all right, so they go through and they put this shadow in, this shade that blocks part of that fat light, that fat beam, so that it makes an image. So now they show like it going through a lens. So there's the focal point, and then the image reverses past that focal point and it flips upside down, right? So then at the focal point they put a ordinary mirror. Oh no, this is an ordinary mirror over here. This is a beam splitter. So then they use this crystal of barium titanate. And this is really cool, like how this that crystal's cool. Like, could you see that it goes into resonance with this laser that's shining on it. You can, it's really neat. This phase conjugate mirror made of this barium titanate crystal. So look at that. They shine it on this phase conjugate mirror, and it takes a minute for this resolution to appear, and then it builds up this phase resolution through all these reflections, and then it produces the image. There's actually light being bounced around in here, and then it's causing phase conjugation within the mirror, which is causing the light to cohere. And then it eventually it merges to that image. So now what he does is he puts a diffuse cup. So this is a frosted glass. It's diffusing all that light, and so instead of it like a regular polished piece of glass permits the light through in a straight line, this kind of sends the light. It just shoots the light and sends it off in every which direction. If you can think of a diffuser, a way of like optical diffusion. Let me look up an image of this to show you guys a better, trying to describe things that are really difficult to describe with words to the layman. Optical diffusion is, so diffuse thing. So diffuse transmission, right? This is like when things, if you get a polished mirror, right, it bounces off, all the light is exact, right? But if you get a surface like this, it has a diffuse reflection, and it just sends the light in every which direction, like, unpolished, rough surfaces, like your regular tabletop, it causes this diffusion. Yeah, so you can, if you trace out the collimated lines of incident rays of light, they're bouncing off all these, imperfections in this crazy material, and they're bouncing every which way, This is like the surface of that frosted glass. It's not polished smooth. It's got this rough edge, and it's sending all these lights through it in every which direction, and in all these directions. So when those go through, they hit this phase conjugate mirror, and then they go in all directions, in all opposite directions. But the problem is the phase conjugate mirror reflects in those same directions. So no matter what incident angle, it's going to reflect off at all these crazy angles. So it's going to resolve that diffusion. So the diffusion mixes up that light source and sends it in all these different directions. And then what this optical crystal does is it has all these bounces, and it bounces back and bounces back and bounces back, and all these little quantum calculations take place, and eventually it goes into this resonance, and the image comes through. Because of all these little quantum calculations that are going on through this diffusion, and it backwards calculates the path through the glass that it took in order to get the image back, and and it has to go into resonance first, so that it gets the image back. It's very cool to watch. It's slowly going into resonance, and watch the image slowly come back into resolution and view as it goes into phase with. Pretty neat, right? What's actually going on is all these photons are retracing their path through that diffuser to figure out and resolve that image. It's like instant. These are really complex calculations that for us to do, but optically they can be done in a fraction of the time with, essentially, quantum computers. It's basically optics. It's basically optical photons doing the calculation to resolve that image, which is really cool. That how that works with reflection, because it's reflection, yes, but look, it's reflection through off this phase conjugate mirror, and it's going through like a frosted cup. Imagine being able to like put something through a diffuser like a frosted cup that completely splits up and sends this information in every which direction, and then being able to take that and resolve that back into a useful information once again. That's pretty high tech and in depth. I thought that was like super cool. I wanted to point that out. As we know, the Wright State University has an ultra-fast photonics lab. I uncovered earlier this year. Some of the members working for that group working on a lot of terahertz technology, which was related to some classified projects that were going on there. There was 1,000 documents of classified material that were taken from this lab. Apparently, this guy was just taking his work home with him and got in some trouble for it. And there was an article about it, which led me to find this group and a bunch of their research. Very interesting stuff going on there. I talk about export control laws on the technology, about how these laws are protected, how this information is protected from transmission to, foreign technology division and getting, basically it's like, it's these laws that were set up to, like, during World War II to prevent, the Russians from getting our Manhattan Project secrets. But in reality, that these things are used or could have been used to keep alien technology from the public in the same way. It's basically like, it works to keep us from having this technology to give to our enemies, but it also keeps, us away from this technology that we're not supposed to have. So where do we go from here in 2021? It's kind of the question I want to answer. I created, I didn't create this all on my own. I basically brought a group together of like-minded individuals who want to continue what our Orion project and Stephen Greer was trying to start with, his effort to declassify and disclose new technologies related to anti-gravity and free energy. That's pretty much what I want to do. We have a lab now. We have a open source web conference where we invite a bunch of different experts to come and contribute, and we did have discussions with like a team of, it's like a gauntlet where we just break all this stuff down and really pick it apart in ways that hasn't been done before, and it helps weed out a lot of the frauds and a lot of the bad people in this community, because those people don't go on conferences like with a lot of other technical people because they get called out, and that's exactly what we're doing. We want people that like getting called out, that like getting accurate, like being accurate, and aren't here to put on a fraud or put on a front. And we just trying to build this community up of open source talent and people bringing data into our database and scientific and technical intelligence to the table, so that we can analyze that with our laboratory and our experimentation, and hopefully get public verification and bring disclosure through that. If we do get positive results in our lab, we will be publishing them immediately and not patenting them, not trying to do any of those things that might result in the information being compromised and stuff. But yeah, this is just a fraction of some of the stuff I've been working on. But yeah, just trying to piece this all together and figure it out piece by piece. Really staying focused on the science and the physics of trying to understand this technology and how it works and how we can get from where we are now to where we need to be, because that's the important question right now. Is we're at the step. We need to make the step, and we need to figure out how to make that step and what we need to do. So part of it is part of disclosure would be cool. Yeah, if the government could come forward and be like, yeah, we found these things and we hid them from you for whatever reason. And part of it says that we don't need the government. We don't need any of these people. Most of these people don't know shit that we see. We had TTSA around for 3 years with Steve Justice, and claiming that he worked on all this crazy, and they haven't revealed half the stuff that, a regular civilian like me reveals in his spare time while working a full-time job doing, real work and raising a family and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it's very telling who's in this for, getting information out and who's in this just for themselves and stuff, and for money or collecting donations and stuff. I saw that craft when the TTSA waved that craft around in front of our faces and were telling us they're going to build this craft. I just laughed because I'm like, you guys don't have a science department. You haven't, like, we're so far from that. Like, you're not going to just jump right into building a craft. We have so much information to still sort through, and then so much to work on. More stuff on, I got so much more stuff I got to add to my report too on all the metals research, and because the government's research on this stuff goes deep, man, and you keep finding more stuff the more you look. I found this 1975 paper from NASA on research on metal solidification in zero gravity, done by Grumman Aerospace Corporation in conjunction with NASA. So, you have the top aerospace companies working with NASA to experiment with alloys being built in space. And one of the interesting things about this, the Roswell material, is that allegedly some of the metallurgists who looked at those Roswell alloys were convinced that they had to have been produced in space because they're alloying metals with such different atomic mass and size, that it's very difficult to alloy, certain types of metals and atoms together that just don't mix well, that are so different in mass that if you try to mix the two together, they separate like oil and water, like if you take two different mass liquids and you try to combine them, they don't combine very well, right? Oil just sits on top and the water just sits on bottom, right? So in order to mix oil and water together properly, you have to create what's called an emulsion. And an emulsion will actually dissolve the oil and mix the oil droplets with the water, and you're able to get a stabilized emulsifier. So you get this water and emulsifier and oil, and you can emulsify things. But again, you need lower gravity, and it would really help if you could shut off gravity or turn gravity off, which you can do in space. So apparently NASA was interested enough to do a lot of research into that. And let's talk about some more technology that came out in the last year. Well, not the last. Some of the stuff's a little bit older, but this is stuff we recently found and are talking about. Stronger terahertz waves and detection of hidden objects. So they can use these terahertz wave to see through pottery, see through paint. They could go look at the Mona Lisa and see how it, go down to the canvas and underneath the paint and see how it was started on, interesting stuff like that you can go and image things, and image surfaces and layers of surfaces that are beneath things, using these advanced terahertz imaging techniques. Basically, they shine it on and they resonate with a layer, and it generates what are called surface plasmon polaritons along that layer, and then you can measure the feedback from these waves to sort of understand what those layers are and what those layers are doing. Then there's this coupling of photons when with the production of polariton exciton pairs, which are basically the coolest thing is like. One of the coolest things I learned about in physics is pair production and annihilation. Pair production and annihilation is just the fucking most bizarre and strange thing you've ever heard of. It's how can a photon, a piece of light, just create particles out of nothing? It hits a nucleus, this light particle hits a nucleus and it creates a positron and an electron. And if you take a positron and an electron, you can put them together, and they attract because they're negative. They do this death dance. They spin around each other, and then they annihilate, and they create two new photons. And pair production and annihilation is one of the most fascinating phenomenon that happens in physics. It's just mass out of the vacuum, and then mass going back into the vacuum and disappearing. And I thought that was always super interesting. But basically, you can, if you get these atoms jiggling and these photons and phonons jiggling strongly enough, you can basically pull these positron, electron, and the antimatter particles out of the vacuum. You can generate antimatter on demand, which is a really cool thing to be able to do. If you want to create anti-gravity, you can, cover your surface of your craft in antimatter, you can do it instantaneously using these polariton condensates. That's a little different. I want to stay more on the polaritons and stuff. So right now, scientists predict a state of matter that can conduct both electricity and energy perfectly. I thought this was super interesting. From the University of Chicago, 3 scientists, basically they were looking out to see if properties that are compatible. So they looked at these properties of these materials, and then they graphed them and overlapped them, and they tried to see if that both of these properties could exist at the same time. And they found, there's this one possibility, this one area where they could exist if you did these things right. So they backtracked with computers using really heavy duty computers to handle all this crazy math that they were doing to figure this out. They figured it out. And they said, it might work if you did a bilayered superconductor. Like it will work, but you need like a double layered superconductor in order to get this. This is maybe one of those environments that could possibly host one of these exotic states of energy that conduct both electricity and energy perfectly. These dual layer superconductors. I thought that was super interesting because Podkletnov talked about the dual layer superconductor. He was the one that mentions in that interview about the disk that, I have that interview, and Podkletnov says in part 5 of that interview that it was a double layer, it was a bilayered superconductor disk. So if these scientists are predicting that you're going to see, these strange effects in bilayer superconductor disks, well, someone saw those strange effects and reported it. And he got called crazy and got like ostracized and from the scientific community for it. So yeah. Hopefully things are really going to pick up and change in the next couple of years, man, because mainstream science is just on such a dead end on so many levels. Is not a dead end. I'm not going to. There's a lot of really great scientists doing amazing research and amazing work out there. But the mainstream scientists, the television fucking scientists, the people that are really popularizing stuff, Neil deGrasse Tyson, like these guys, man, these guys need to fucking retire. They just need to give up their job, put down the microphone and just step in and retire and let someone else take over who's more competent than you are. You and Bill Nye, both of you guys, just, I'm sorry. Just shut up. These guys are the worst. They're we have all these scientists doing great research and these guys not talking about any of that crap, and they're still repeating the same shit that they were saying 20 years ago on fucking Discovery Channel about aliens and UFOs and stuff. This conversation hasn't changed in 20 fucking years. Get over your fucking selves and shut the hell up, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Go watch my channel. Go watch the last hour and then come talk. Then let's have a fucking talk about aliens after you've went and watched the last hour and a half of this presentation. And then let's get Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson on to talk about some science and some aliens and some alien science with the alien scientists, motherfuckers. Yeah, by the way, I'm never ever going to wear a bow tie. All right, that's not my style. I'm a punk rock gangster scientist, and I'll wear a bandana and I'll drink beer on my podcasts. All right. That's because that's, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm never going to be one of those people. I'm never going to be that mainstream image, person who's concerned with how people view and interpret him. I don't give a fuck about y'all. I don't give a damn about your opinion about who you fucking think I am or who you think, like, I don't care at all. Like, it means jack shit to me. It really does. Like, with what I'm doing out here and the research that I've done and the level that I'm at with this stuff and the level that most of you are at, not the people in my chat, obviously. I'm talking about the people out there that are out there talking shit about me and stuff, that with these big channels and these major popular followers and stuff, man. I'm gonna stay how I am. I'm not gonna ever bow down. I'm not gonna ever pretend to like people. I'm not gonna ever stop talking shit about other people in the community that are just doing things wrong. That's just who I am, man. Like, there's so many people that need to, get their head out of their ass and stop chasing bullshit, dude. Like, we got so much real science and so much real information and stuff to look at into now. They're shooting down drones with microwave weapons in Africa. I thought that was cool. The Drive, these guys, the War Zone, Tyler Rogaway and Brett Tingley, these guys are killing it over on the Drive, doing some of the best work for Disclosure. These guys have done more for Disclosure in the past 3 years than I've seen out of TTSA at all. TTSA, of course, to the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge, the rocker, Tom DeLonge, who said he was going to build a spaceship with a bunch of government insiders and stuff, and then they didn't do anything. They didn't talk about any science. They didn't talk about any physics. They don't talk about any anti-gravity. They don't talk about anyone in ufology. They don't talk about anyone else's work. They don't, say, they don't tell us who their favorite researchers are, who their favorite, UFO guys are. It's just all about To the Stars Academy. And then To the Stars Academy, what happened to them, dude? They fell apart and they disbanded. They all went their separate ways, and Tom's been, like, silent. And, okay, so... Explain to humanity through story. Develop technology related to findings. So collect and study anomalous data. Okay, so you are somewhere here. You're nowhere near here. I'm like somewhere between step 2 and 3. Okay, trying to explain this technology. The technology, a lot of this stuff's already been developed. You're just not even aware of it. Because you're not educated on that stuff, because you're a rock star. And your head scientist is a Scientologist who's like, he's done some great work in some areas. I read a lot of his papers, led me to a lot of stuff, but reading this guy's website on earthtech.org, dude, he's got a lot of bad ideas about a lot of stuff. Like, his whole take on cold fusion is that it's just mismeasurement of heat. And that's not what I found with my investigations at all. And there's so many other people that worked on this stuff and have taken Hal Puthoff's work so much further. And we're talking to those people and presenting them weekly at our conferences now. So buy TTSA, have fun with that. Like, I don't know what the heck you guys were trying to do with Disclosure and bring it out, but it failed. I wasn't impressed. And I'm continuing Disclosure the right way without you guys. We're going to continue to talk about these materials and the things that are being developed. Meta lenses. So we talk about metamaterials and what metamaterials are. Metamaterials are materials that gain their properties through their structure, that they have, very interesting properties based just purely on the structure, their geometric structure. And so when you take geometric structures like this, you can affect the properties of that material. just based on the geometry of and the structure of that material. So then this is a metamaterial that focuses light. It's a lens that focuses light, and just based on metamaterials. Fascinating stuff. Here we have some really some research that was being done into the materials. I can't get the picture now, man. This is a good picture. Anyways, this is carbon nanotubes and doing yarns, building, carbon nanotube sheets and then building yarn and building string from carbon nanotubes. Very interesting stuff. This is a thing on 4-wave mixing that has to do with the phase conjugate mirrors and 4-wave mixing. Fascinating stuff. Again, this is the technology we're exploring here. I wanted to get more serious about this. Of course, I'm just I do this in my spare time. I don't do this professionally. I'm not a millionaire rock star with a huge budget that I'm able to, I can just devote all my time or hire a whole staff of employees to build me a fucking slick, awesome website and, and a whole media and entertainment company to make videos for me. I'm doing this all by myself, bro, in my spare time, and people want to make fun of me and talk shit and be like, oh, these guys are idiots, they're not serious. Or, bro, like, look, I'm trying to throw shit together at the last minute. Like, give me a break here. Like, I do all this research and all this information in my spare time, and I don't get paid very much, if anything, for any of it. So I do this for fun. I do this because this is what I'm passionate about and interested in. This is, I don't see anything that these guys have released, man. 1 year ago is the last video they've put out, man. They have. It's pathetic, and these are like 3 minute, 5 minute, half an hour long. I'm putting out like hour-long, 3-hour, 6-hour streams where it's just jam-packed with more technical information than most people can really wrap their head around or handle in a sitting. So who's doing more for disclosure, man? Like, I'm sorry, bro. Like, disclosure is not going to be easy. It's not going to be like just the government comes, the government just comes out and discloses, like Ryan thinks is going to happen, post-disclosure world, right? This is another guy. Mark's always watching this dude when I go to the lab. He's always watching all the pop UFO culture stuff. This guy, man, 3 hours ago. Ryan, we love you, man. You're a riot to watch, man. Entertaining as hell with the UFO Jesus. And but anyways, Mark's obsessed with that stuff. Me and Mark got in a huge argument. We get in huge arguments every day over all kinds of stuff because we just don't agree on half the stuff. So Bob Lazar was the big thing recently that we were talking about. Bob Lazar. Well, why don't we might as well bring up Bob Lazar. While we're on the topic. So these new pictures came out. Anyone seen these? This is Papoose Lake. This is the hill where Lazar said S4 was built inside this hill. Do you still think there's a top secret base there, hidden in the side of the mountain there, like Lazar said? This is Papoose. It's basically a radioactive wasteland. It's right next to the right over these mountains over here is the atomic testing site. I think that's Area 51 up here to the northwest. Oh, no, it might be around the corner up here, a little closer. I think it's the other side of these mountains. Sorry. But this place is covered in radioactive fallout. It was so radioactive that Jerry Friedman, who went out there on an archaeological expedition, got cancer from just breathing in the radioactive sand and dust that's just out there. He didn't wear a mask. Disclosure is coming. Yeah, so these pictures, that's Area 51 out there. Real nice picture of Groom. It's taken from an airplane, but yeah, this is where S4 supposedly is, and this is Papoose Mountain range. This is like that little hill, and it's really hard for a lot of people to believe that there's anything there now after seeing these real high def pictures from like that really show it in perspective, because you can't really see much from the overhead satellite imagery. But yeah, a lot of that story that Bob Lazar told, you can go to my website. People hate this site who are big fans of Bob Lazar because I was really into Bob Lazar. He got me into this when watching Unsolved Mysteries, way back in the day. I wouldn't have gotten so far down the rabbit hole with studying the physics of UFOs and been so interested in this stuff and been so quite as passionate about it. I don't think if it weren't for Bob Lazar. So I will thank him in part for that because, he has brought a lot of scientific interest into this, got more people like, oh, well, what's going on here? But then when the only problem is that most of the scientists who look into this realize this guy's full of crap. He's a liar. He made up half this stuff. He copied it from, well-known public sources of information that existed at the time, which I've traced back all of his intelligence and information to publicly available sources of information. He could have, made up every piece of his, fabricated every single detail and element of his story with publicly available information. In fact, I've traced down every single detail from his story, having researched this for like 16 years, thoroughly. I've traced back every single piece of intelligence that Bob Lazar ever talked about, and every single one came from, publicly available information. None of this led me to any kind of classified information or any kind of classified programs. Nothing. And after 30 years, that's impossible. Okay? That's fucking impossible to have done 16 years I've been researching this. I found so much information related to like the real scientists, the real government programs. I find all their papers. You find, stuff in the academic literature that leads you to more information, more researchers, more scientists, more people working on the same types of things. In this case, there's none of that. There's absolutely none of it. It all goes back to movies, television shows, and magazines. And friggin', the hand scanner thing that Jeremy Corbell sensationalized and made such a huge deal about. That guy's a freaking liar. It came from the Close Encounters movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's a published article from a 1973 magazine with the hand scanners in it. And we have the movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind that came out in 79, a decade before Bob Lazar was ever a thing that talked about those hand scanners. But Jeremy Corbell made it like, oh, Bob had the hand scanners. He had to have been working out there. He had to have worked at a top secret facility on real information. And then I get, Mark telling me that, he was fed disinformation, but actually was brought out to a real facility and worked on real craft. I was like, what, for the week? You look at the timeline for his events and track down the timeline for his whole story and really go into all the details of it. None of it makes sense. It's all a big pack of goddamn lies. And George Knapp is revealed half of the information. I made a whole video called George Knapp Debunks Bob Lazar because George Knapp has uncovered every facet of the story and basically exposed the fraud for what it is, but he's never done the justice of taking all that information and putting it together in a clear package for people to look, the guy's a fraud. Here's all the info, all at once. He hides this shit. And then he had the interview that he did with Gabe Zeifman, who flew over Area 51 and flew over Papoose Lake and took those pictures, right? Gabe Zeifman, the pilot, he interviewed him, had all this information, had these pictures, posted a whole thing about it, and then George Knapp took the fucking video down. He censored the story, and he killed the story and killed the information. Why? Because it doesn't support Bob's lies. And this is this guy has been at the center of a massive, disinformation campaign, essentially, on behalf of who? For decades. I mean, obviously he's made a ton of money off the Bob Lazar story. Lives in a friggin' amazing house, a beautiful home with an indoor swimming pool. I mean, this guy's got millions of dollars that he's made off of UFOs for the past 30 years with this Bob Lazar case. And it is not in his interest at all to expose this or come out with the truth. He's going to censor stuff like that, censor information and just keep pushing this story that's in everyone's face, dude. Bob Lazar, it's on fucking Joe Rogan's got Bob Lazar like wrapped around his fucking skull. It's like, dude, like I was screaming out to Joe Rogan for the past 2 years trying to get him to talk to me where I can get him names of real physicists who worked on real programs with real information. And no, dude, it's Bob Lazar, fucking millions of views. Got friggin' Jeremy Corbell front and center going and telling lie after lie after lie. So many lies you can't even call them out like fast enough. You're too busy still trying. Wait, hold on. I'm still trying to call you out on the first lie, and meanwhile you've made up 10 more that I can't even keep up with. These people are freaking, they're scum. And Richard Doty and these people posting with pictures with this dude, saying, oh, our pal, that guy's a scumbag, dude. I'd spit in his face if I fucking met him. Are you kidding me? That guy made Don Berliner commit suicide. He made one of the best UFO researchers of all time kill himself because he drove him mentally insane for the military. This guy's a piece of shit. I would not be caught dead fucking posing in a picture with him, calling him my friend. I'm sorry, dude. I guess this is where I get angry and start ranting and raving against all popular ufology for being such a fucking absolute lie and such a fraud. It just pisses me off that these people can get on Joe Rogan and get millions of viewers and get fucking on Larry King Live to go and talk about bullshit, to misinform and disinform people with fucking absolute nonsense. 30-year-old debunked garbage. And then I got friggin' Mark telling me he believes this friggin' asshole. This dude is so full of shit, dude. Do the research. Go on my website. Like, read through all this stuff. Every single facet of every piece of intelligence that Bob Lazar ever put forward is completely traceable to publicly available sources of information. None of the science checks out. There's no stable isotope of element 115. We're never going to find one. It's not the way to anti-gravity. There's no research that's ever been done by the government. All the anti-gravity research that I've dug up, no one looked into element 115. The Russians looked into element 115 with some of their particle accelerators, and they were trying to discover a stable isotope because of this stuff. They were, curious about it, but they never did. And they would have if it were real. But it's not. It's a big fucking lie, and it's a big fucking fraud to keep all the public and everyone else distracted out there with disinformation and lies. And I think that's part of what TTSA was doing as well. Is I watched this. Let me find it. So I watched this came up in my feed on YouTube the other day. All right. And it was I think it was this one. Yes, this is it. Okay, here's the video. I want everyone to go and watch this tomorrow when you guys are have some time, all right? And really think about this and let some of the lessons that this guy puts forward sink home. This is Jeffrey Robinson, and he's the ACLU's top racial justice expert. And he talks about the dark history of Confederate symbols across the country and really talks about the history of racism, slavery, and how that history has been rewritten and reclaimed and recaptured through language, through culture, through a lot of different elements. And it really directly relates. This relates to UFOs, right? Because the techniques that he describes these people using for erasing, racism from history, erasing white supremacy from history, even though white supremacy is so prevalent and it's almost like it's there, but you don't even realize it's there. It's a way to erase things that are publicly, something that's really a stain and is in the public mindset and is out there and everyone is aware of. And it's how to take things like that, like UFOs and the whole truth about, like people are that over 50% of, Americans believe that the government's lying about UFOs and covering up UFO information, right? Take that. And then how do you take that public belief as something so ugly and then change it right in front of people's eyes? And how do you do that? How do you physically go about reclaiming history? He talks about George Orwell, those who reclaim history, those who control history control the past. Those who control the past control the future. Hey, Mark, you're live on Alien Scientists.
Oh, perfect. Yes. So you were talking about Bob Lazar.
Yeah, you want to. Are you gonna Zoom call in and show us some experiments? And I don't want to talk to you about Bob Lazar.
Skype, 'cause I didn't have time to set it up. Can you turn on Skype?
For what?
Oh, so we can talk.
What? I'm not talking to you about Bob Lazar. You don't know anything about Bob Lazar.
I know a lot about Bob Lazar, and I published something about Bob Lazar that you haven't watched. I actually just
All
was
right.
just reading your
But I don't care. I don't care about Bob Lazar, and I'm not talking to you about Bob Lazar because he's a fucking liar. And good. Publish that. I'll get you on in a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm not doing this fucking Bob Lazar shit. I want to talk about something else. I want to make my point clear that I'm going to make before I fucking get distracted. Let me finish this point. Fuck Bob Lazar. The truth about the Confederacy of the United States, right? So this is how they erase history. Those who control history control the present, and those who control the present control the future. Okay? This is how it fucking is. What was to the Stars Academy? A lot of people, including myself, I said from day one, and I've been saying that, this is obviously an intelligence organization and a way to recapture, and reframe all of ufology and recapture the UFO field in an attempt to hijack it and reclaim its history. It's exactly what they did with what Jeffrey Robinson was describing that the government did with the history of slavery and the history of that in America. They changed the language. So one of the first things that these guys did is they changed UFO. They made, let's make the term UFO go bye-bye, and we're going to make a new term called UAP. Okay, it's going to be called Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. Okay, and that's the first thing that Project Sign and Grudge did when they existed, is they came out and they changed the language. They changed that flying saucers. They're not going to call them flying saucers. They're going to call them UFOs. We're going to call them unidentified flying objects. And that was their first change in language when we started calling them UFOs. And now we're taking all the UFO stuff and we're disappearing it and starting with this UAP term. So that's like the first part of it. And then we're taking all the history of how all this stuff goes back to Roswell. It goes back to Project Sign and Project Grudge and Project Blue Book. But now we're taking it and we're making it all, instead of going back to that original stuff and where I'm showing research now that's really coming out with a lot more science and a lot more of the nitty gritty of the individuals and the people who are involved in this whole thing, right? As we start getting into that and that information starts coming public, right? Now we're burying this whole older story, all this older information, and we're trying to tell the public that there's this 180 days, and we have a new UAP task force, the government's new task force. They're creating a new one now, but then the old ATIP task force that everyone's focusing on with this stuff. Of course, it leads all back to Bigelow Aerospace, and it doesn't lead back to any of the original stuff. So they're basically reclaiming the history in a lot of ways. They're bringing it back to so that people go and research the stuff. They get to Harry Reid, they get to ATIP, and that brings them to Bigelow. where instead of where they would have researched the stuff, it would have brought them back to all this original UFO stuff and then to Battelle and to the metallurgy studies and to all that stuff. That's what they're trying to keep people away from. And then they're trying to reclaim the metamaterial stuff. They're trying to reclaim metamaterials, the science involved in that. They're bringing out this Atoms Project material with those arts parts and Linda Moulton Howe's piece of metamaterial from a craft and stuff. That's what they're trying to reclaim, all the scientific information related to the materials and distract people with this Atoms Project and those metamaterials from the arts parts thing. And that's really what I believe is going on. After I watched that whole demonstration on the ACLU about how they erased Black history, it made me really realize how UFO history is being erased in much the same way. It's identical to what's going on. So anyways, Bob Lazar, I'm going to turn on Skype and we're going to bring friggin' Mark on so I can school him on Bob Lazar, because I've held back on these live streams because I'm like, look, I don't want to there's too many people that like Bob Lazar just getting into this. They got into this because of Bob Lazar, and we don't want to, we're trying, I guess Mark is trying to play he's trying to play this, neutral guy so that we don't turn too many people off or whatever. I don't know if that's what he's doing or if he really believes Bob Lazar, but we're about to find out, because I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, why Mark believes Bob Lazar. Oh, well, he can call me if he wants. That's bullshit, dude. All right, who can hear us? Can you guys hear us? I can hear you. Oh. Hold up. Where's the settings? Where the fuck are the settings, dude? I can hear you fine, man. We can hear you in the live chat. I just got to blah, 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 microphone. We're gonna go. How about that? Can you hear me? I haven't thrown away everything he said, and I'm not. I'm only angry at the idiots who believe him after all the evidence and that proves him to be a fraud and a liar. Yeah, I'm angry at Jeremy Corbell for reigniting the flame under this story after 30 years of it dying. That's who I'm pissed at. Who? Thought I saw who? Yeah. He told all the security at AlienCon that I had threatened to beat him up because I had said, I had challenged him to like an octagon match on a live stream. Where I'm like, dude, I will dominate you physically and intellectually, you pathetic bearded piece of shit. And he basically told the security there, they were trying to they were keeping an eye on me. They thought I was going to go and like attack him physically, like go and physically beat him or something. It was pretty stupid, man. That guy's a pussy. Oh, they can hear me just fine. I just keep talking. Everything should be fine with your audio. I'm looking right at the audio track right now. How come I got 15 people saying there's no sound and the sound looks like it's working fine on my thing? Okay. Try that again. I can hear him and he can hear me. I don't know why you guys can't hear him. Mark can't be muted if he is hearing him. We cannot hear Mark. No one can hear Mark. It's registering on my thing. It says I have sound coming through on the stream, dude. It's fucking bullshit, dude.
Hey, everyone should be able to hear me now. Now I got it twice. Second, mute that. Okay, can you hear me now?
Can you hear him now?
Put it next to the microphone, and they should be able to hear me. Oh, they hear me now. Perfect. Okay, so what we're doing over here in the lab is we were working with Banduric, and we saw some anomalous results. This is the first time that we've ever tried high voltage experiments with isolated power supplies. And Jeremiah can show us the isolated power supplies that we put together, because this was what was required for Banduric. And we've had this like crazy idea that the Thomas Townsend Brown's power supplies were all running on vacuum tubes. The modern power supplies run on transistors and resistors and these solid state components that basically connect everything to ground. So if these experiments, these high voltage experiments, really require isolated power supplies, which is technically what's happening in a flying saucer because it's not connected to ground, then maybe we've been doing them wrong all this time and all we saw was ion wind because that's all that was there. And to get the effects correctly, you need isolated power supplies. And that's what we're working on right now. Jeremiah has this test rig set up that he built. Really cool, nifty device.
I fucking hate audio, dude. Look, it's here. It's working on my track. You can see this is my vocal track, and this is him coming through. And I can see his audio here, clear. I got fucking 50 people in the chat saying they can't hear you.
Just put the microphone from your phone right next to the microphone. The speaker from your phone. Put it on speaker and
it's not working, dude. They can't hear you. It's too fucking quiet. My phone's right here on the thing. We can't hear Mark. Can you guys hear now?
Testing 1 2. We can hear him, just super low. Okay, so you have to put it near the microphone. Your cell phone. You have to put it near the microphone for this to work. Basically, you have 2 audio inputs coming into your computer, and only one of them is going to the live stream. It's a software issue. Could be on our end.
It is.
Okay, so let's
I'm gonna fucking hang up and not do this. I hate fucking audio glitches where people like. I hate this shit, dude.
Okay, let's concentrate on that. Let's concentrate on the experiments, okay?
I can't concentrate on shit if people can't hear you.
How about I call you on Zoom then? Wanna try that?
Can you guys hear this? Like, I'm hanging up on this, dude. All right. Well, I'm just going to not do that because I can't hear shit. I'm going to put 1 fucking star. I could not hear any sound. And I don't know, man. This is just fucking bullshit, dude. I hate this fucking audio glitches, dude. Like, do I got to go to college for 4 years to become a sound engineer so I can figure this shit out? Like, it says it's fucking working in OBS Studio. I have fucking audio here. It's full. It's going maxing out on the bar. For him, I can hear him clearly in my headset. It's showing that the audio is going through on OBS. Yet 90 people in the field can't fucking hear him. I'm doing Zoom then. We're going to do Zoom. Because Skype, I really think it's Skype's fault. Skype fucking sucks. So call me on Zoom, Mark, if you're still out there listening and watching. Just call me on Zoom if you still want to talk about this. I really... What doesn't this guy hate? I don't hate truth. I don't hate people that are honest. I don't hate people that, like, you know, really, like, admit to their mistakes. Geez, I'm not out here just hating everything and hating on everyone. You know? Jesus. Not just this person that's just full of hate, just spewing friggin', you know, hate because I hate people, you know? No, I'm just sick of disinformation and people and liars. Trying to get good information here. Let's watch a video while we're trying to get Mark back here on the Zoom call. Let's find a quick video that we can watch. I wanted to show you. Jeez, movies in a microwave. Oh, rubies in a microwave. That looks pretty freaking cool. Bruh, it's a tradie thing. I have my headphones and I can hear him perfectly. So some people could hear him perfectly. Yeah. Yo, exactly. Yes. Theodore Borowski Jr. gets this, right? It's a cultural thing. It's the area that I was raised in and where I grew up and why I'm like this, all right? This is why I'm not like, you know, I grew up in fucking, I didn't grow up in Boston, actually. I grew up in southeastern Mass, but it's still, this whole Northeast attitude, this whole Northeast area is very much like that. People are like that. We're just not into bullshit, dude. We're into, like, there's more intellectuals, there's more colleges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island than anywhere else in the world. There's a more densely packed collection of colleges. We have, you know, MIT, Harvard. There's a lot of really smart, educated people in this area that I live in, and a lot of people that are just these you know, straight up no bullshit. We don't take no shit, dude, kind of people. That's just the attitude. That's just the culture. That's how it is around here. And yeah, we don't like a lot of we hate on a lot of people because a lot of people fucking deserve the hate, man. They're full of shit and they're out here fucking distracting people and lying to them and bringing them absolute and utter nonsense. Right. So call me on Zoom, Mark, if you want to call me. I guess I don't, or send me a Zoom link invite. I don't know, but I'm trying to figure this out, and it's not working too well. I just don't want audio glitches. I hate fucking sitting here and dealing with stupid audio problems, dude. There's an audio issue on every fucking alien scientist stream. If I had fucking Tom DeLonge money, I'd hire a professional sound engineer and some, you know, professional media people to come here and fucking help me with this. And even they wouldn't be able to get this right because even there it's fucking working. But then I get everyone in the chat saying it's not working. You can't hear shit. You know, it's pointless. Well, I don't fucking get it. But you know, it's not what I'm here for. It's not to fucking be an audio master and a media master. I don't have those fucking skills. I don't have the people. I'm here to get information and provide information and analysis, and that's it. In any case, it's fucking New Year's, man. Happy New Year. It's 1:30. It's 1:40 in the morning. It's fucking, obviously this is not going to happen. The fucking audio glitch isn't working, and I'm not going to sit here and waste my time arguing with Mark over Bob Lazar, because there's nothing, absolutely zero to be fucking learned from that idiot, dude. There's nothing, not Mark. There's nothing to be learned from Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is, you look and you do the research, the guy was holding a friggin' tape measure for Gene Huff when he met John Lear. They traded an appraisal on John Lear's house. They gave John Lear a free appraisal on his house in exchange for all of John Lear's UFO files, all of John Lear's UFO information. John Lear gave him the whole dump on Billy Meyer and all of his UFO information. So then Gene Huff and Bob Lazar took John Lear's information, all John Lear's research on Area 51, all the stuff that John Lear was talking about on Mystery Wire and and with George Knapp before Bob Lazar came on the story to kind of, to sell and package the whole thing. All this information came from John Lear. And anyone who knows who John Lear is one of the most prolific disinformation agents in the entire history of disinformation, and with regards to the CIA's counterintelligence and disinformation dissemination program. I mean, this guy has spread countless lies, countless disinformation. There's a big CIA pilot, 9/11. There's John Lear, right? He's the CIA pilot that ex-CIA pilot gives sworn testimony that no planes hit the World Trade Center on 9/11. Complete 9/11 disinformation spread by this man, John Lear, retired CIA pilot. Most of the Area 51 information was leaked out and came out through this man. Bob Lazar took a hold of that information. Of course, they got that information through John Lear. Gene Huff and Bob Lazar bought that information off of John Lear, and then they published that information and in the form of the Lazar file. They re-scripted the information, wrote it, and readapted Billy Meyer and Adamski's UFO knowledge and information into a hybrid version of all the information, and they released the Lazar tapes, is what I believe happened, and then this whole it's all been disinformation. That's been the source of it has been John Lear, predominantly. There's some real information mixed in. They have to get some things right every once in a while, otherwise nobody will listen. But for the most part, it's been a massive disinformation front and campaign with this. John Lear's been behind so much of it. They gave Lazar the whole story. I think Lazar saw an opportunity to make a name for himself, and that's what he did. I don't think that, a month after meeting John Lear, who's going on Mystery Wire and talking to George Knapp all about, Area 51, I don't think a month after meeting this man that EG&G would give Bob, a friend of this man, a job at working there. I don't think they gave Bob Lazar a job working at EG&G. When he was friend, in fact, Bob Lazar says that at the interview with EG&G, they asked about his relationship with John Lear. So they knew this guy was friends with John Lear, and they wouldn't let anyone like that work out there. It's just asinine and ridiculous for anyone to even entertain that idea that he actually was hired to work out at EG&G and went to actually work out at the base. When they had intelligence on Bob Lazar, knowing that he's friends with a guy like John Lear, it makes absolutely no sense. Again, the intelligence and the information is all that really is important in this case, in analyzing that, and we've done an excellent job of digging through that information, sourcing it, finding out where that sources for that information came from, that came from John Lear and magazines and movies and books and TV, and I can't find any information that has led me to anything classified or any other scientists, the magnetohydrodynamics stuff that he talked about. leads nowhere. I got all kinds of books and information on magnetohydrodynamics and it's the history of all the propulsion research that's been done around it and stuff. And again, love to try some of the stuff in our laboratory and see anti-gravity work. But also I found Ning Lee has an interview, and basically Ning Lee was talking about, this was 97 that she gave this interview, but they have a thing with Ning Lee talking about nuclear gravity and the extension of the strong force and stuff back in the 80s. Apparently that's where Lazar could have gotten some of this information from, is regular researchers working on this stuff. None of his information has led me to anything even remotely, usable or engineerable. So that's why I'm just like, I know that stuff's disinformation, and I know those people aren't real. I know Bob Lazar is not a real physicist and not a real scientist. And just the fact that he's gotten so much attention and so much views should be the first clear indication that what he's doing is blatant disinformation, a public disinformation campaign. I've said this for the past 3 years, probably 2-3 years with Bob Lazar. I mean, we did a whole investigation on him on Alien Scientist about a decade ago with some guys that worked at Area 51, really digging through the story. And I thought we had debunked this case like 10 years ago. And then, Jeremy Liar Corbell resurrected it from the woodwork and is now promoting it again and spreading lie after lie after lie about the case, just to muddy the waters and put more disinformation and wrong information out there. I would love the chance to debate this lying sack of shit asshole. I really, really dislike this man. He's done a complete disservice to the entire field of ufology. He should never, ever have made documentaries. And I want to shame his parents for giving him the money and loaning him the money to make these documentaries. Jeremy Corbell got an inheritance or borrowed a bunch of money from his family to put these documentaries together and turn himself into a filmmaker. I just, God damn it! Why did you have to give him that money? And apparently he never paid them any of it back. He hasn't paid a dime of it back. He's kept it all to himself and for his own profits and stuff, according to the information I've gotten about this guy. But it's just a shame. He should have never ever made documentaries. He should have never ever gotten involved in UFOs and he shouldn't even be a thing right now. But he is, sadly. It's a shame it's really a disservice to the entire community to have a lying asshole like this be like the face of your movement and the face of your culture, to have, this is the face of alien scientists. When people think of physicists and anti-gravity and alien science, this is the face. This is the man they go to, and this is the first person they think of. This is the first person the pop culture identifies with. And that's a goddamn shame, because this man's not even a physicist. He's a con artist. He's a former panderer and pimp. He used to prostitute women for his, not prostitute them, but he used to run a brothel service. He used to installed cameras at a brothel service, apparently, is what he was charged with. He set up cameras and an internet system for, so that these prostitutes could find Johns through an online service, and that he could film the interactions and then later use that footage to blackmail the Johns. Apparently, is best of my understanding, what Bob Lazar was doing when he came out with this whole story about working on alien spacecraft at Area 51. What he was actually doing at the time was not anything related to that. He was pulling a leg over on John Lear and pulling John Lear's leg, and it got a little crazy and out of control. And he was having a lot of fun with it for a long time until the 93 Rachel interview where he was asked about his professors, and the story kind of fell apart, and he faded out of the public limelight for a number of years after that and only gave really close, trusted interviews with people that he trusted. He wouldn't give out public interviews, and he's only agrees to interviews where he can see the questions that he's being asked ahead of time and stuff. So it's all scripted now. Fravor, you should be ashamed of yourself posing with these two clowns. I'm sorry. These people are a joke to this whole movement and to the whole history of ufology and physics. Really, that's the popular face of it, though. But that's how I feel about all of them. I think they're a bunch of whack jobs, man. Jeremy Corbell especially, the guy's fucking nuts. He accused me of stalking him and being obsessed with him, dude. Like, dude, no, I'm just angry that an idiot moron like you gets so much fucking attention. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here talking to a stream of 170 people, just 170. You get 1.7 million on Rogan, okay? That's 10,000 times. You have 10,000 times the audience I do. That's what pisses me off, is that you have 10,000 times as many people listening to you, and you have 1/10,000th of what I have to say. You have nothing to say except repeating old 30-year-old bullshit and making up lies in between. That's all, and that's why I'm mad. That's why I get angry at this, because I actually have a freaking conscience. Because I'm actually like, man, I actually feel for the future of our planet and our civilization. Like, oh my God, all these young people that are growing up, with this bullshit. They're gonna waste so much time and they're gonna be 38 years old. They're gonna be like my age before they're putting the information together and actually realizing if they even get that far, because most of this information's been fucking scrubbed from the internet. You can't even do the research that I've done anymore, because it's like, I mean, some of the stuff's so hard to find. They've scrubbed it from the internet. So it's like, I have a right to be freaking angry at this, dude. It's pathetic, man. The wrong people are getting all the attention and all the and they have nothing to say, nothing to share with the public but bullshit. And it's not changed anything in 30 years. We're going to have a lot to do in 2021 if we want this movement to get anywhere and become anything and really most people don't want to look into this or how it works. They just want answers handed to them, and they want to feel like they're part of something, and like, so they get all these people rallied up. I don't know. It's just crazy, man. These guys, I don't know what to say, man. I just know that you want to get educated. You want disclosure. Stop listening to people promising you that the government's just going to come and hand you everything, all your answers on a silver platter, bro. It ain't that easy. The government's best scientists don't understand this stuff. They disagree and they argue with each other about what it means and what it is. So don't think for a second that disclosure it's a process, man. There ain't no one person that knows and has everything and has all the answers, and I wish there was. I don't think it goes as deep. Like people I don't know, people give too much credit and to these liars. They believe these people because they have huge followings and stuff, and that doesn't mean anything, dude. It doesn't mean nothing. The people that are telling the truth have the smallest followings out there, some of the smallest followings. The people that are lying and selling what people want to hear, those are the people that get the big views and the big audience and stuff, and it's sad. But anyways, fuck audio glitches, fuck all this complicated shit that never fucking works when you need it to. Man, I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do with this technology. I got to get teamed up with some good people and the right people in 2021 to make some shit happen, bro. We're trying to bring good people on this team, and and bring a collection of the right minds together to get this job done, man. Because we've been sold out. We've been sold up Schitt's Creek for a long time, and we need to get this movement back on track, bro. We need to rope these people in, and we need to ostracize these liars and these scumbags from the community. Like, there's so many of them, and they banded together, and they've kind of formed this stranglehold at the top of ufology, and it all revolves around, just a few people. It's like George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell. George Knapp, you need to retire from ufology. And you're 67, you're almost 70 years old. What else are you trying to do in this field? What really are you trying to do? Just fucking retire already, you old sack of bones. Like, you have so much fucking money, and you have the nicest house with a fucking indoor swimming pool, dude. What else are you fucking doing? Are you just are you head of the MJ-12? Are you just in it to do disinformation now? Like, have you been just part of the fucking cabal for the past, 5-10 years, and you're just now working out in your retirement just to spread disinformation? I don't know. But bro, you've done some of the best research on Bob Lazar, but you delete it all and you remove it from your page so people can't ever put the pieces together properly like you should have done for them. And you claim that, oh yeah, I reported on this and give people access to this information. Bro, you bury all the real shit and you keep promoting fraud. Go, one of the worst people out there. Then Jeremy Corbell, of course. His name is really Kenyon Lockyer. His real name is Jeremy Lockyer. Not even Jeremy Corbell. He's got 4 names, so you can't even look up and find out who he really is. He's a scumbag. He'd sell out his own mother for a fucking pile of money. Jeremy Corbell reminds me of that dude you meet at the bar who thinks he knows fucking shit. He just sits there and talks up and spins fucking crazy, ridiculous, stupid stories, and but can't back any of it up. That's who he reminds me of. He's just freaking. There's quite a few fakers and frauds out there. The other one I want to point out is this guy, this kid Deep Prasad, pretends to be this genius physicist who knows physics inside and out. Of course, he's like a TTSA insider. He's big inside TTSA with Elizondo, and good friends with Jeremy Corbell and all the other frauds in ufology. I guess he joined this UAP task force and got in a high position on this UAP tracking team or whatever by telling them that he was a quantum physicist and actually had some background in education in quantum physics and stuff. But they later found out that he was lying about his credentials. He had only taken a 2-week primer course on quantum computing, and then called himself an expert, and then and now pretends and he likes to pretend on Jimmy Church and a lot of other shows where he's been on as a guest. He likes to pretend like he's some sort of authority figure and all knowledgeable of subject matter in this field, and it's just a joke because the dude got called out as a fraud on the UAP task force and lying about his credentials. And then I tried to reconcile and bury the hatchet with this kid and reach out to him, and he's just been a prick. He doesn't respond back. He's posted untrue things about me on a couple other pages and forums and stuff that I've read. And just trying to downgrade and talk shit about the quality of my character, in order to tarnish the reputation of the work and the research that I've done. He's just trying to, this guy's my character and who I am as a person is somehow more important than the research that I'm doing, and how he's so His kid's full of himself. He's got an ego that's just massive, and he really has contributed very little to the body of knowledge or the discussion, or pretending and sitting there and pretending to be someone who's really intelligent, really well educated, really knowledgeable on this subject. But the reality is that I've not seen any evidence for that. He avoids conversations, avoids these kinds of things where I'd love to have a talk with the dude and bring him on and hash this out, but no, he won't do that. He's too busy trying to put on this front and pretend to people like Jimmy Church that he's a quantum physicist and actually understands this stuff, and he's a big Bob Lazar supporter too. So yeah, I don't know. These guys in popular ufology, there's quite a few of them that I'm just not happy with the work that they're doing and who they're pretending to be and the stuff that they're putting out there. Again, Ralph Blumenthal and let's talk about Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean. They get access to the New York Times. We getting stuff published in the New York Times now. Everyone thinks that's a big deal about getting UFO stuff published in the New York Times, like it's doing big things for disclosure. Meanwhile, all the scientists and the physicists and the people in the academic community that I've talked to are completely indifferent to the subject. It's not changed the way that they look at the subject or view the subject in any way whatsoever. So really, when we talk about disclosure, it's like, with the public's becoming more aware of these things, but what's our scientific community saying? And how do we get the scientific community more interested in this topic and get them to start taking these things, these subjects seriously and engaging in a discussion on that? And the answer is, if you want to engage the scientific community and get them talking about this and acknowledging it and discussing it, you don't talk about any of the shit that they mentioned in the New York Times article. You don't talk about UAP. You don't talk about, the sighting, all the stuff they talk about, the Pentagon's, unit for investigating this stuff. Scientists don't give a fuck about any of that shit. They really don't. Like, it makes no fucking difference. Oh, this guy Lou Elizondo worked on the ATIP program. Big fucking deal. You think physicists give a fuck about any of this shit? No, they don't. Because why? At the end of the day, it doesn't change a goddamn thing. It doesn't help them make anti-gravity. It doesn't help them fucking make free energy. It doesn't help them, build a craft to get us off this planet. It doesn't get us any closer to the scientific goals that they're working towards. Okay, you might be working toward a goal or where you're trying to get the public more interested in this subject and bring it open to public discourse and disclosure in that way. That could be your goal. But that's not what the scientists' goals are. They don't give a fuck about that shit. Go talk to them. So I just want to say, like, all this, we got the New York Times, and TTSA took a whole ton of buttload of donations in from all these people, and they spent all that money on publishing, UFO, conspiracy stuff in the New York Times. That's what they got out. Is the New York Times? They got this that Nimitz encounter, which is all they've been plugging for the past 3 years. Right. This is all TTSA has been about, is this release of these two Pentagon UFO videos, which one of them apparently came from Jeremy Corbell in 2004. He posted it on Vimeo. And so one of them the source was Jeremy Corbell. It wasn't even the fucking Pentagon. So we've been wasting our time going after these Go Fast video and discussing the gimbal video and the Go Fast video, debating on it, people coming up with really good explanations. You have all these fighter pilots and all these witnesses, arguing about how legitimate this sighting was and all this stuff. And what has it changed? What has it done? Absolutely fucking nothing. Not a thing. You want to get scientists, you want to get the real researchers involved in a discussion on these technologies. You need to talk their language. You need to talk about the science, and that's really what I'm doing with trying to get the research down with all this stuff I'm putting together. Really putting the pieces of this story together in a light that's never been in a way that's never been done before. This is like the work that I've been doing on this channel as alien scientist for the past 16 years, and I'm putting together accumulation of all that information and going down to the quantum level, really focusing on engineering new machines where the quantum world meets the material world, and that's where all the magic is going to happen, I believe, in the next 50 to 100 years of physics and material science and the stuff that we're going to unlock with these materials and the capabilities. So again, we've come a long way since the 40s and the 50s with the people who set a lot of this stuff up and realized that we needed a space program. Vandenberg, one of the head of the Air Force at the time, knew that we would never be able to have a chance in hell of replicating that Roswell technology of that material if we didn't have a space program. And, of course, the research that was done into it determined that it had to have been made in space. So that, we need to make a space program so that we can put stuff in space in order to make these materials and these advanced materials to get us even further into space. This is where we need to go back to and focus on, because NASA is falling apart now. It's like, now we have SpaceX doing a lot of the roles that NASA ordinarily used to do. And it's just interesting, where we're at. The space program kind of fizzled out and it kind of like went away, and with the end of the space shuttle program. And now NASA is kind of like this underfunded organization that's just, I don't know what they do anymore. And we need to it would be great if we could get public interested in space exploration again and get them interested in this all again. And this would be a great way to do it. And I wish that NASA, the bureaucrats at NASA and the position holders could just get their stick out of their ass, or maybe just close the organization down and create a new one, because they've just been so old and so stovepiped in the military industrial complex that they just, the amount of money they spend on their experiments is just fucking insanity. This replication of the Podkletnov experiment that they did and cost about $500,000. We could have done that for about 1/5 of the cost, I believe. We're trying to develop ways to do these experiments with much less funding, much less resources, on a much tighter budget than these bigger organizations can do. And I think a lot of these big organizations might go to the way of the dinosaurs or the dodo bird pretty soon if things continue down the path that they're going, especially with SpaceX, taking over the majority of NASA's production capabilities and stuff, taking over that. So I don't know. These agencies really need to think about their future and their place in this, and disclosure, and how they fit into this whole puzzle of things. Because this would be a great way to get the American public interested in the space program again, and get more funding for space exploration and new endeavors. If we could harness this and adapt this to a new audience and a new level of exploration. You know what I mean? If they were to disclose, even just a little bit of something, and it would reinvigorate, public trust, and it would reinvigorate public interest in these programs. Because right now, nobody fucking trusts NASA. Nobody trusts the government. Nobody trusts any of these people. And that's how it's going to be. It's how it's going to stay. And you're going to get a bunch of scientists that fall on NASA, but the public's really going to believe that all this other stuff's going on because they've been lied to about so much other stuff that nobody believes, this stuff anymore. So they're in a bad position, and they could really help it if they played their cards accordingly and really rethought this whole position, because disclosure's coming. A form of it anyway. This is a little bit this is kind of like low-level disclosure compared to, I'm sure, what the government could do in 180 days with their resources and their database. If I could put this together in a week, I can imagine what the government and a well-funded and well-connected and well-resourced agency could put together in 180 days. So, and if they need some help, they can use this as a guide. I think it would be a good starting place for them to really base a lot of research on, because this stuff needs to come out, man. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to die on this fucking planet in a pool of our own shit, killing each other in riots and fighting over the food that's left, and dying of coronavirus. I don't know. It's just our future of our species is just really uncertain, and it's really it's really, I have a lot of questions and concerns for our future, man. There's a lot of problems. And I think that we can avoid this stuff if we can destroy the modern ufology, what they're trying to, this pop culture image of ufology, what they're trying to promote to the public as ufology. If we can hijack that and destroy that and replace it with something that scientists can actually, appreciate and get on board with, where scientists are like, oh, like, hey, there's something I can look at here. There's some science now. Hey, now you're talking my language. These videos and stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That's all right. That's cool and all, but it really doesn't change anything. It doesn't really fucking matter. What really matters is the technology and the science that's going to bring us there. And right now it's cool because I'm fine. I find all these technologies, all these different things, that these labs are working on this. This lab's working on, this lab in Germany is working on the titanium things. This lab in California, applied science and materials. They're the ones who hired Ning Lee. They're working on a lot of these materials. There's a lot of companies all over. This company, Liquid Metals in Connecticut, manufacturing liquid metal technologies. So there's companies all over the world working on this stuff in little limited capacities, and what we need is an organization that can kind of bring all this stuff together and really coordinate it into a coherent collection where you can start piecing all these pieces together and I don't know. We need a new space agency. Basically, we need NASA needs a reboot, and they're fucking dead in the water. Their advanced concepts lab and their current people are so concerned with PR and not upsetting the status quo and the bureaucracy and all this crap. It almost like the whole organization just needs to be defunded and shut down and then start it again from scratch if they can't, figure out a way to overcome their fear and their uncertainty about come forward with all this. Just come out with the fucking truth. You want people to trust you and believe you and have faith in you again. And just start telling the truth. Be like, yeah, we lied. We had to, we had to cover this up. This happened, and for obvious reasons. But I don't know. What's so bad? 2021, things need to change, man. Like, there's a serious breakdown of trust with the government and with between the public and the government, and especially with what's going on with popular ufology right now. It's just a freaking joke, dude. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the information. I've really, I need to put this together much more coherently. I'm still doing research, putting this together. When this gets put together, and I'd like to do it in a full, like a real documentary, something like professionally done with like a team of people, if we could. So let me know if you're interested in working with me on a documentary about all this stuff to kind of put it all together in one spot. It might have to be like a multi-part TV series at the rate it's going with the amount of slides and everything we have. So if not, then we could still, like, I need help with media and other people that are doing media stuff, because I don't have a media division. I'm not a famous rock star. I don't have To the Stars Academy media division. So that'd be great if we could get some help with that and putting this together, because I'm just a one-man show, and I'm doing this in my spare time while I'm working a full-time job doing real work to pay for it all. So again, thanks for watching, and hopefully we can bring some serious disclosure in 2021 and kick this year off right. Enjoy your quiet battle, my friend. Oh, it's quiet now. It ain't gonna be quiet for long, man. It's gonna be loud as shit. Once we get the right audiences and we start getting out there, man, it's only going to be a matter of time, dude. Bob Lazar can't keep up the fraud forever, dude. You know, they can't just, you know, they're going to eventually have to get people on to debate this. You know, people are researching the case more and more. And, you know, how long can they keep, you know, Bob Lazar on the front line? They, you know, it's not only going to last so much longer. They can't, like, just keep this guy, you know, people. And then a lot of people who are really interested in the stuff start researching the Bob Lazar stuff. And then they find me and they find my stuff. And then they're like, oh, shit. So, I don't know. It's only a matter of time, bro. I've been doing this quiet battle for 16 years now. I'm never going to fucking stop. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing this till I die or until they kill me. And, you know, that's all there is to it, bro. I want disclosure. I want real information, and I want real truth, and I'm sick of the lies. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.